Chapter 26:03. I am Huang Yin, the 13th son of Father God. With my blood, I cast the glory of the 9-prison tribe, expand the territory, and create the world. Even though I am about to die, my soul will not disperse. I hope that my tribe will once again display the power of Father God. With Father God's will, I will cut through all obstacles and break the cage. The power of Father God? The will of Father God? Break the cage? Although Lin Feng was confused, he still obtained a lot of information from the ancient records. This was something that the Quan tribe did not have. One was like the main bloodline of the family, while the other was just a branch. Just as he had guessed, their statuses were very different. He flipped through the ancient records one by one. Most of them recorded the history of the Huang Yin tribe, the genealogy, and so on. There was very little information about the 13th son of Father God, Huang Yin. It's getting more and more confusing. Lin Feng glanced through the ancient records again and smiled bitterly. The original 3 mysteries had yet to be solved, and a new one had been added. Who was the 9-prison tribe's Father God? Was he an almighty? What was his relationship with the Yellow Spring secret realm? Did he have anything to do with the Yellow Spring Road? Or did he die in the Yellow Spring mystic realm? The reason why the 9 Hell tribe was special was because their tribe was created by this Almighty. Was the Yellow Spring secret realm strange because the Almighty did not fuse with the universe's heavenly Tao? However, since the Almighty could create a tribe, there should be more than one special tribe. As far as he knew, the 5 giants each had at least one or more Almighty. There was also Old Man Zhai Xing and other scattered Almighty. Even if only half of the Almighty created the tribe, there should be many special tribes. It was impossible for them to be unknown. However, he had never heard of them before. Maybe it's because I'm too ignorant and too weak. Lin Feng smiled and did not care too much. After all, this was only the first Huang tribe that he had explored. It was normal that he did not get much information. Just like when he swept through the Quan tribe, he gradually gathered the information and deciphered the language of the 9-prison tribe after the 10th tribe. Now that he had enough strength, he could sweep through the 2nd, 3rd, and even more Huang tribes. There are at least 10 of them. I have the confidence to take them down now. Lin Feng searched through all the dark yellow minarets, and the information he obtained was obviously much more than the information he obtained from the Quan clan tribe, including the Yellow Spring Pond, Yinyang Mountain, 9 Hells Baleful Chi, and so on. So the core of the Yellow Springs pool is indeed that jade pearl, Qin Emperor's origin pearl. A total of 108 Qin Emperor's origin beads have been lost. Only with the Qin Emperor's origin pearl could there be the Yellow Springs pool. The Yellow Springs secret realm was controlled by the 7th Mercenary Alliance from the very beginning. Most of the 108 Qin Emperor origin beads that were lost were in the hands of the 7th Mercenary Alliance. The energy of these origin pearls was very strange and should be very precious. However, even if they were primordial treasures of the chaos, they might not be useful to venerables. No wonder I saw the Qin Emperor's origin bead above the Yellow Spring pool. It was one with the Yellow Spring pool, and there were mysterious runes around it. It should have been set up by the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Lin Feng quickly understood. The Qin Emperor's origin pearls left behind by Father God were obviously only useful to the 9 Hells tribe. Therefore, the 7th Mercenary Alliance did not take all of them. Firstly, they could not use them, and secondly, they still needed to control the 9 Hells tribe. Although he could not use the Qin Emperor's origin pearl and could not resonate with the energy within, he could at least absorb the energy of the Yellow Springs pool. Yinyang Mountain is formed with the Qin Emperor's origin crystal as its core. Yin and Yang is one. To cultivators who cultivate the Yin-Yang heavenly Tao, it is like a primordial treasure of the chaos. 108 Qin Emperor's origin crystals. Lin Feng was secretly shocked. Qin Emperor again. 108 again. If this had nothing to do with Father God, then there must be something wrong. So, the father that Huang Yin was referring to is the Qin Emperor? Almighty? Lin Feng had a vague idea, but he could not be completely sure. Compared to the Yellow Springs pool, there were much fewer Yinyang Mountain. He had swept through 30 Quan tribes, but there were only 3 in Yang Mountain. It was a far cry from the number of Yellow Springs Pool. Although the Qin Emperor's origin crystal contains special energy and cannot be used by ordinary supremacies, the Yin Yang Heavenly Tao, and it is very beneficial to cultivators who cultivate this Tao. Lin Feng could roughly understand. Therefore, the 7th Mercenary Alliance took most of it and only left a small portion for the Nine Hells tribe. There seemed to be only 2 treasures of the Qin Emperor. Lin Feng flipped through the other books, but there was no introduction to the rest. There was also no mention of a universe god's burial ground. Perhaps there were only these 2 treasures, or they had disappeared and were taken by the 7th Mercenary Alliance. There were too many possibilities. Just as he guessed, the Nine Hells' baneful qi should come from the Yellow Springs path. Of course, this was what Hierarchy and Wu said. It was recorded in the book as the Nine Hells Abyss. He wasn't sure if the Nine Hells Abyss was the Yellow Springs path, but even if it wasn't, they must be closely related. The Nine Hells tribe knew the location of the Nine Hells Abyss. It wasn't recorded in the book, but it had been passed down for generations. It wasn't only the Nine Hells tribe that could collect the Nine Hells' baneful qi, but only they knew the exact location and the time to collect it. If foreign cultivators wanted to collect the Nine Hells' baneful qi, they would have to be very lucky. Actually, it's a good way to find the Nine Hells tribe. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. It was actually very difficult to find the Huang and Quan tribes that were hidden underground. But it was actually possible to find the Nine Hells' baneful qi in the universe god's burial ground. He only needed to know the location of the Nine Hells' baneful qi and lay in ambush. When the Nine Hells' baneful qi appeared, the experts of the Nine Hells tribe who knew the exact time would come and collect it with the white whale bottle and return to the tribe. At that time, he could follow them and find the tribe. Although it's time-consuming, if I can't sense the energy of the Yellow Springs, it's still a good idea. Lin Feng didn't know that someone had already done what he thought and recorded it. There were always cultivators who happened to encounter the Nine Hells' baneful qi. After tens of thousands of eras, the universe god's burial ground was so big that many of its secrets had already been seen through. Mo Huangzun was able to find the Nine Hells tribe by relying on this method, waiting for opportunities. But this method was very dangerous, and it was impossible to determine the strength of the Nine Hells tribe. If Huangzun wasn't strong enough, it would be very dangerous. It's about time. After flipping through all the books, Lin Feng started to search outside. According to the books, every one of the 36 Huang tribes had a Yellow Springs pool, but the 7th Mercenary Alliance didn't take it. Apart from that, there might be some special cultivation grounds that the Quan tribe didn't have. Chapter 26:04. Lin Feng soon found the Yellow Spring Pool. He had absorbed a lot of energy from the Yellow Spring Pool, and he could even sense the Qin Emperor's origin pearl floating above the Yellow Spring Pool. Now, Lin Feng finally knew its true appearance. The Qin Emperor's origin pearl here is much bigger than the one in the Quan clan tribe. The Huang clan tribe is indeed different. Even the 108 Qin Emperor's origin pearls are different. Therefore, the 7th Mercenary Alliance only took a portion of the ordinary Qin Emperor's origin pearls and left the important ones for the Nine Hell tribe to pass down. The Qin Emperor's origin pearl was very important. Without the Qin Emperor's origin pearl, there would be no Yellow Spring Pool. Lin Feng had absorbed the Yellow Spring Pool's energy and knew how important it was. To the Nine Hell tribe cultivators, it was like laying a solid foundation. I thought that the Yellow Spring Pool's energy had been fully absorbed. I didn't expect there to be a second half. Lin Feng smiled as he entered the Yellow Spring Pool. He was already familiar with the place, and he wouldn't complain about having too much of such a basic thing. In an instant, the Yellow Spring Pool's energy covered his body, and the Qin Emperor's origin pearl shone brightly. It was another round of absorption. The improvement wasn't as good as the first time he entered the Yellow Spring Pool, but the Huang clan tribe's origin pearl was still quite effective. It was much more abundant than the Yellow Spring Pool's energy that the Quan clan tribe absorbed. And this was only one of the 36 pearls. There's still 35 pearls. He felt his control over his body becoming more and more perfect, even if it only increased by 0.1%, It was his control over his strength and body to the extreme. It wasn't as simple as multiples. The more perfect his control over his strength, the more powerful his attacks, movement techniques, and saber techniques could be. Just like before, his control over his body was only 7 times. Now it was 9, 6 times. The difference was like heaven and earth. Just his comprehension of saber techniques was more than just one level higher. A martial artist's attacks pursued perfection. The saber technique realm and the mixed power realm were the symbols of perfection in the universe's heavenly Tao. His control over his body was getting closer and closer to the extreme. Although it would be more difficult to improve as he progressed, Lin Feng knew very well that he didn't need to absorb all 36 Great Qin Emperor's Origin Pearls' Yellow Springs pool energy. He only needed to absorb half of them, and his control over his body would be perfect by 10 times. His mixed strength had increased to 1, 3 times, which was far beyond the limits of a human at the Master God level. As a human, his body was only so big. No matter how much he expanded, he could not reach the size of a special life form like the Catfish King. There was no perfect life form in the universe. Every race had their own specialties. Lin Feng walked to the end, his heartbeat quickening. It was an enormous and terrifying force. It actually contained a faintly discernible will of the heavenly Tao, as if it was the controller of the universe. The closer one got to it, the more intense it became. The powerful pressure was even capable of causing one to kneel on the ground. Step! Lin Feng stood still. What entered his sight was a silver-white skeleton. It was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. It had 6 arms, and its eyes were empty. It no longer had any luster, but the skeleton contained astonishing power, as if it was the embodiment of a universe. What kind of skeleton was this? Which expert's corpse was it? Almighty? It's not a powerful being. Lin Feng had seen Old Man Zhai Xing before. Even if it wasn't Old Man Zhai Xing's real body, its aura was completely different. Almighty beings had already transcended the universe. Even if they were dead, it shouldn't be like this. Besides, he didn't think that the 7th Mercenary Alliance would leave the corpse of an Almighty in the burial ground of Ian God. Wait, the burial ground of Ian God. Could this be the Ian God? Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat as he stared at the silver-white skeleton. Although he didn't know who Ian God was or what characteristics he had, his intuition told him that this skeleton with the will of the heavenly Tao was most likely Ian God. Obviously, this wasn't an ordinary supremacy, and it was impossible for it to be an expert of the Nine Hell tribe. Besides, the corpse had probably been here for a very long time. It might even have a similar history as the Huangyin tribe. How terrifying would a corpse that hadn't been destroyed for thousands of years be? However, this was only his guess. There was no mention of it in the records of the Huangyin tribe. Could it be that Ian God wasn't an expert, but a title? Otherwise, why didn't the records of the Huangyin tribe mention it? Or was he wrong? This silver-white skeleton wasn't Ian God, but something else? There's still not enough information. Lin Feng heaved a sigh of relief and quietly observed the silver-white skeleton. He didn't get too close or touch it. Although he could resist the will of the heavenly Tao contained in the silver-white skeleton, it was impolite to desecrate the corpse of an expert. Moreover, it was hard to predict what would happen if he touched it. Even the 7th Mercenary Alliance had placed it here. There was no need for him to create more problems. Even if he kept this silver-white skeleton, what use would it be? Was the ancient demon god's corpse in the divine Yinwu residence taken in the same way? Lin Feng muttered to himself. He wasn't sure because there wasn't any will of the heavenly Tao on the skeleton of the ancient demon god. There was only a mass of chaotic air in its chest. The two seemed to be different. Or could it be that the will of the heavenly Tao could be eliminated? After observing for a long time, Lin Feng didn't gain anything. He smiled bitterly. He felt that the more he explored, the more mysteries there were. He lacked a true answer. Perhaps this is the reason why Old Man Zhai Xing and Divine Yinwu Residence asked me to come. If I'm really fated with the primal chaos origin venerable, I'll definitely find the answer. Lin Feng took a deep look at the silver-white skeleton before leaving to search for other treasures. Although the Huang Yin tribe had declined, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. The tribe was at least 10 times bigger than the Quan clan. It was like a declined royal family. Although there weren't many tribesmen, they still maintained the dignity and style of a royal family. In the tribe, there were many rare and unique heaven and earth fruits. Some were extremely rare outside. For example, the heaven and earth fruit that could strengthen one's soul control and soul quality. Lin Feng roughly knew the price. One fruit was at least dozens of chaos gems. The Huang clan was indeed much richer. Its location was better to absorb the Yellow Springs energy than the Quan clan. There were many specialized cultivation grounds that gathered more Yellow Springs energy. Lin Feng looked around curiously. It was like the first time he barged into the Quan clan. He was looking for other treasures. Unfortunately, they're all fist arts. It's hard to learn from them. Lin Feng discovered many fist arts that were engraved on the totem pillars. Their realms were higher than his saber arts. However, there were specializations. It was fine for him to observe and comprehend the saber arts, but he knew nothing about fist arts. The Nine Hell tribe seemed to be the same. They cultivated the myriad phenomena heavenly Tao that combined yin and yang. Chaos force and fist arts were the same. As for the others, some were proficient in spatial laws, some were proficient in temporal laws, and some had outstanding soul power. Lin Feng had seen them all when he swept through the 30 Quan clan clans. It seemed to be implying something. Chapter 26:05. It took a lot of time to search for the Huang Yin tribe. Just like the first time he had entered the Quan clan, tribes of different levels had different information and treasures. Lin Feng had obtained a lot of treasures in the Huang Yin clan, especially the various ancient information and the information of the Nine Prison clan, which had solved many mysteries. After that, the few Huang clan tribes that they explored weren't as pleasantly surprised. There were also many Quan tribes. After all, after thousands of eras, many Quan tribes had risen and had Nine Hell War venerables. However, there were not many of them. Basically, there was only one Nine Hell War venerables, and their combat power was equivalent to that of a beginner Huangzun. The Nine Hell War venerables absorbed the energy of the Yellow Springs, so their requirement was much higher than that of the 8 Hell War venerables. Lin Feng entered the Yellow Springs according to the rate of energy consumption. It was very safe. Basically, he could judge the strength of a tribe. No matter if it was the Huang tribe or the Quan tribe, they were the same. The only difference was their bloodline. Huang tribe. This was the 5th Huang tribe that Lin Feng had found. Another one. Lin Feng stood in front of a dark brown skeleton and stared at it. This skeleton was different from the one in the Huang Yin tribe. It was less than 5 meters tall, had a wide flat head, 4 eyes, and a pair of wings on its back. However, the same thing was that the dark brown skeleton also contained a powerful energy, will of the heavenly path. It seemed to be a life that was blessed by the universe. Even if it died thousands of years ago, it would not disappear in the river of time. Its aura and energy were very similar to the one in the Huang Yin tribe. It was very powerful. He is also an Yin god. Lin Feng seemed to understand a little. 5 Huang tribes and 2 indestructible corpses that contain the will of the heavenly path. It was not a coincidence. It could be imagined that there would be such skeletons in other Huang tribes. That is why it is called the burial ground of the Yin gods. However, where did these so-called Yin gods come from? Are they a special race or some kind of inheritance? With such powerful strength, they could be said to be almost invincible in the universe. How did they die? Were they killed by powerful existences? Or did they kill each other and start a war? Or is it related to the Nine Prison clan and father? Lin Feng observed for a long time. However, it was difficult to determine much from the 2 corpses. Moreover, their original strength had long since disappeared. What was left was more of the will of the heavenly Tao. It was difficult to determine their original strength, but it was clear that they were very strong. He might be even stronger than my teacher, Venerate God Anqing. Lin Feng had never seen many venerate gods, and Yuan venerate powerhouses were even more unapproachable. He was still unfamiliar with the strength of a venerable one, so he could only make a rough estimate. Sixth tower, seventh tower. The strength of the Huang tribe was gradually increasing from one war venerable of 9 hells to 2 war venerables of 9 hells. Lin Feng also gradually felt the pressure. Fortunately, the netherworld pool was still strengthening his body and soul, and his close combat strength was slowly increasing. Another corpse was added to the 8th one. The 10th one also had a corpse. On the 13th tower, there were 2 corpses. Huang Yu tribe. Lin Feng's eyes were sharp. The leader of this Huang tribe, Huang Yu, was the 8th son of father. He was also the one with the highest ranking among the Huang tribes that he had explored. Basically, it was certain that the higher the ranking of the descendants, the richer the bloodline and the stronger the strength. At the same time, the tribe usually contained more information. After the first Huang Yin's tribe, the leaders and descendants of the other 11 tribes were all ranked after Huang Yin's. Therefore, aside from the treasures, the information that he had obtained was actually trivial and not much. However, it was different this time. I am Huang Yu. I have inherited the will of Father God and killed 2 Aeon gods. I have no regrets even if I die. The information recorded in the ancient book verified Lin Feng's judgment. The skeletons that contained the will of the heavenly Tao that he had seen earlier were undoubtedly the skeletons of the Aeon gods. Previously, he had thought that the Aeon gods were a unique race, but after encountering all sorts of life forms, and even some of the Aeon gods that he recognized, the answer became clear to him. The Aeon gods were not a race. It was more likely that they were a force other than the 5 giants. Although they were not as strong as the 5 giants, they should have enjoyed a certain status in the universe and were quite extraordinary. After all, the strength of these Aeon gods was estimated to be at the level of a peak ultimate god. Even if they were not as strong as a Yuan venerate, they were not far off. So, does this force still exist? Why did they attack the 9 prison tribe? Is it because of the fight for the Yellow Spring secret realm, or something else? There were not many records in the ancient books of the Huang Yu tribe. The description of this Aeon god force was very brief. However, it was obvious that this force came from the universe and should have had the Chaos treasure. However, there was no trace of it at all. The 7th Mercenary Alliance has complete control over the Yellow Spring secret realm. This includes the Qin Emperor's origin bead, the 9 prison tribe, and the burial ground of the Aeon gods. Although there is no Chaos treasure here, if we can find the Huang or Quan tribes, the value of the harvest will still be considerable. Lin Feng also knew that it was not that easy. Even with his perfect chaotic soul, it was very difficult to sense the energy of the Yellow Spring, let alone other supremacies. If they could not sense the energy of the Yellow Spring, it would be even more difficult to find the 9 prison tribe. Naturally, it would be difficult to gain anything. My control over my physical body is almost at its peak. I hope I can hold on to a few more tribes. Every time he entered a tribe, the requirements for strength would be higher. After all, Lin Feng was still only a peak almighty. Although his physical body had reached the level of a beginner Huang Zun, it did not mean that his combat strength had reached the level of a Huang Zun. It could only be said that he had reached the threshold of a Huang Zun. If he encountered a true beginner Huang Zun who controlled the Chaos treasure, his chances of winning would not be high. The 14th tribe. Lin Feng could not help but be slightly surprised when he returned to the Yellow Spring. The consumption of a Yellow Spring's energy here seemed to be a little less than he had estimated. Is it because I sensed something wrong, or has the 9 prison war supremacy of this 9 prison tribe left? Lin Feng hesitated for a while, but still decided to enter. After all, it was better to consume less Yellow Spring's energy than to consume more. Basically, it was not a big problem. Moreover, there were still many things that he did not know about the 9 prison tribe and the Yellow Springs energy. He could not make a judgment based on just some slight changes. It would be too arbitrary. The 1,000-cut needle locked on to the location, and Lin Feng quickly sneaked in. With his current experience, he was already very familiar with it. The faint wall beneath the ground contained energy, and it flickered with a strange luster. Lin Feng's saber decisiveness and fierce, saber, mournful bone broke a big hole and entered. Bang! The ancient ferocious beast, mournful meander, appeared. The moment Lin Feng entered, his fighting spirit reached its peak. Countless experiences told him that when entering the nine-prison tribe, he had to strike first to gain the upper hand and get rid of the tribe's strongest. However, this time, Lin Feng was stunned. Chapter 26:06. It was completely empty. This was a Huang tribe. Just by looking at the numerous spires, one could tell that this was a Huang tribe. Under normal circumstances, if one broke through the wall and entered, they would definitely see the 9 Hell tribe experts. But this time, there was no trace of them at all. Looking around, the traces of battle were very clear. Many stone houses were destroyed, and there were remnants of energy auras in the surroundings. Whoosh, Lin Feng's aura suddenly spread out. He could clearly sense that the spires were empty. It seems that someone was one step faster than me. It was not difficult to determine. If he could find the 9 Hell tribe, other cultivators could also find it. However, to be able to sweep this Huang tribe, it was definitely not an ordinary supremacy. Either it's a peak supremacy from the 7th Mercenary Alliance, or it's Huang Zun outside. It was not difficult to deduce. According to Lin Feng's estimation, this Huang tribe should have 2 9 Hell war supremacies. Even without the Chaos Treasure, their combat strength was still at the elementary level of Huang Zun. They were definitely not an ordinary peak supremacy. It should be a peak supremacy from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Lin Feng did not think too much. After all, the Yellow Spring Secret Realm did not allow Huang Zun experts to enter. The supremacies outside had lower aptitudes and talents, and it was even harder for them to advance to Huang Zun, let alone advance in the Yellow Spring Secret Realm. In the Yellow Spring Secret Realm, one's perception of the heavenly Tao was much weaker than outside. Find a Yellow Spring pool and other information. Lin Feng immediately acted. So be it. It saved him some effort. After all, the other supremacies could not absorb the energy of the Yellow Spring pool. As for the treasures of the royal tribe, they were dispensable to him. Huang Yin tribe, in front of the totem pole. The Ian God skeleton. I must find a way to get the Ian God skeleton. Mou Huang Zun's eyes were red, revealing his anger. On a flame rock mountain behind the totem pole, there were fist imprints filled with extreme profundity. Above the totem pole, snakes coiled around it, turning into endless smoke. The profundity of the heavenly Tao fist art was contained within. Unlike Lin Feng, who used the saber, Mou Huang Zun was from the devil race. The devil race was best at using their own physical bodies. They were proficient in the chaos, heavenly Tao, and fist techniques. The fist technique of this totem pillar made Sovereign Mou ecstatic, as if he had obtained a priceless treasure. But what truly made Mou Huang Zun ecstatic was the dark red Ian God skeleton. He was well aware of the value of the Ian God skeleton. Although it wasn't even 1/10,000th of the great Ian gods, it was at least 100,000 chaos gems. That was the universe god of Universe 7's godly inquisition. Even if this universe god skeleton didn't have any value, its value as a collector's item was extremely shocking. A novice Huang Zun usually had less than 100,000 chaos gems. Even if Demon Jade Huang Zun had some gains in the Divinity World battlefield, he was only slightly wealthier than an ordinary peak paragon. With less than 20,000 chaos crystals, the price of this Ian God skeleton was 5 times his entire wealth. At the very least. Moreover, there were other treasures of various sizes in the entire 9 Hell clan tribe. This place was much better than the 9 Hell clan tribe he had previously explored. Although he had used all his strength to kill 2 9 Hell war venerables and was slightly injured, but it was worth it. One was worth the price of the ticket. I'm still not strong enough to resist the will of the heavenly Tao. Mou Huang Zun was thinking of a way. He knew that there must be a way to break the will of the heavenly Tao. After all, it was only the will of the heavenly Tao that was attached to the skeleton. It was like an ownerless object. Even if he relied on his own strength to grind it down, he could slowly grind it down or adapt to it. In itself, this is also a method to train one's willpower. Mou Huang Zun practiced his fist technique diligently. The fist technique on the totem pole aroused his ambition. He didn't belong to the 5 great leaders. He didn't have a teacher or an inheritance. Everything had to be obtained in the Divinity World battlefield. He couldn't miss such an opportunity. Suddenly, swoosh. Mo Huang Zun suddenly woke up from his cultivation. He sensed an unfamiliar aura that didn't belong to the Nine Hell clan. It suddenly appeared. A peak almighty? Mo Huang Zun's eyes flashed, and he disappeared. Mo Huang Zun sensed it, and so did Lin Feng. In terms of sensing ability, Lin Feng was even stronger than Huang Zun. With the perfect chaotic soul and his innate sensing ability, he could even sense the insignificant energy of the Yellow Spring, let alone Mo Huang Zun's aura. Mo Huang Zun didn't hide himself. He was practicing his fist technique in front of the totem pole. He never thought that other cultivators would find his tribe. Standing in front of the Yellow Spring pool, Lin Feng waited quietly. Not far away, the space broke open, and a powerful aura whizzed over. Huang Zun didn't hide his aura at all. Lin Feng already had a rough idea. When he killed the 2 Han Chi Demon clan members that day, they mentioned a name, Mo Huang Zun. It was rare enough for one Huang Zun to appear in the Yellow Spring secret realm. The possibility of 2 Huang Zun appearing at the same time was very small. Whoosh! Mo Huang Zun's arrival caused the space to freeze completely. Huang Zun's powerful aura enveloped the entire area. He was like the king of all beasts, looking down on everyone, and his blood-red eyes were locked on Lin Feng. He was carefully sizing up this uninvited guest. As a peak almighty, he came to the burial ground of the Ian god and even found the Nine Hell clan. It was obvious that he was a super genius of the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such knowledge and strength. His status was naturally not low. Mo Huang Zun definitely knew more than the Han brothers. If I let him go, he will definitely report to the 7th Mercenary Alliance. By then, I will have no choice but to leave the Yellow Spring secret realm. I might even have to hand over some treasures of the Nine Hell clan. Mo Huang Zun was cursing in his heart. What bad luck! He had finally found the Ian god skeleton and could have made a fortune after leaving. Unfortunately, he had encountered an internal member of the 7th Mercenary Alliance. What was worse was that the other party had seen him. He couldn't hide it even if he wanted to. The 7th Mercenary Alliance had a rule that once a venerable became Huang Zun in the Yellow Spring secret realm, he had to leave immediately. Otherwise, the 7th Mercenary Alliance would expel him. But if I kill him, Mo Huang Zun naturally wanted to kill him. He wasn't afraid that Lin Feng would steal his treasures. A mere peak almighty didn't have the strength to do so. With his strength, Huang Zun could even kill war venerables of Nine Hell, let alone this immature little guy. What super genius! It was all fake. No matter how high one's potential was, it was useless if it couldn't be turned into true strength. As a demon, Mo Huang Zun naturally liked to solve problems with killing. The only thing he was afraid of was Lin Feng's identity or the treasures on him. Once Lin Feng was killed, he would be exposed. Otherwise, he would have made his move long ago. Before Mo Huang Zun could figure out, Lin Feng had already nodded and greeted him. I didn't see anyone when I entered just now. Forgive me for being rude. Lin Feng knew the rules. Although there was a Yellow Spring pool here, there was a hierarchy of first come, first served. Since Mo Huang Zun had arrived here first, he had no reason to snatch someone else's loot. There were still many Nine Hell clan clans. He just had to find the next one. Goodbye. Lin Feng immediately turned to leave. Chapter 2607. Mo Huang Zun was in a daze. He was in a dilemma, analyzing the gains and losses, but he didn't expect the other party to leave. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind, and Mo Huang Zun's blood-red eyes were filled with killing intent. The other party was obviously scared. If he really had a powerful backer and trump card, why would he leave without a second thought? Even he would go crazy for the treasures here, let alone a mere peak divine master. Want to leave? Boom! Thunder rumbled, and the image of a demon appeared in the void. Space distorted, and perfect chaotic energy blasted out. That was the peak of the chaotic heavenly path realm, stronger than Lin Feng. After going through the baptism of the God World battlefield, Missouri Yu Huangzun's combat power was extraordinary. When he was a peak venerable, he could already see the threshold of Huangzun. Now that he had advanced to a beginner Huangzun, he directly crossed the threshold of Huangzun and reached the standard of a beginner Huangzun. If he had the Chaos Treasure, his combat power could directly jump to the peak of a beginner Huangzun. Therefore, Mo Yu Huangzun could kill 2 war venerables of 9 hells. His combat power as a beginner Huangzun was real. Mo Yu Huangzun dared to attack because he was sure that he could kill this peak divine master in one blow without any worries. Even if it was still very dangerous, he had no other choice. The Ian God skeleton was too valuable. Even if he was discovered in the future, he could just return to the God World battlefield, where even the 5 giants couldn't touch it. After all, he was already used to a turbulent life of fighting and licking blood from his blade. Strength was more important than anything else. As expected, although Lin Feng left, he was cautious. He had killed the 2 Hanshi demons, so how could he not be wary of Mo Yu Huangzun? The other party was not a member of the 7th Mercenary Alliance, but Huangzun stayed in the Yellow Spring secret realm after his promotion. If he left just like that and told the 7th Mercenary Alliance, he would be expelled from the Yellow Spring secret realm, and everything would be for nothing. Only the dead could not speak. Moreover, the other party was certain that with Huangzun's power, he could easily kill a little guy at the peak of the Divine Master Realm. Clang! The vicious saber Morning Bone was unsheathed, revealing its malevolence. Lin Feng immediately counterattacked, not wasting any time. Aurora suddenly appeared and transformed into a curtain, attacking and defending at the same time. Lin Feng was facing a true expert like Huangzun for the first time, yet he didn't show any signs of stage fright. Space collapse caused the space above to distort. Although Lin Feng's control was not as good as demonic Jade Huangzun's and his chaos heavenly Tao was suppressed, his control over his physical body was worlds apart. He surpassed demonic Jade Huangzun by a large margin. His saber techniques were superior to Mo Yu Huangzun's fist techniques. One was powerful, while the other was exquisite beyond compare. Although demonic Jade Huangzun's attack was powerful, it was like a giant mountain facing an indestructible diamond awl. It was crushed immediately. Lin Feng's saber techniques changed rapidly and exploded. His control over his physical body, which was close to 9 times stronger, pushed the power of his saber techniques to the limit. His power erupted perfectly. Boom, boom, boom. He blocked the first move, advanced with the second, and suppressed demonic Jade Huangzun with the third move. Impossible. Demonic Jade Huangzun's blood-red eyes were filled with shock. The terrifying attack power in front of him made him feel like he was facing a mid-level Huangzun, but his opponent was clearly only a peak divine master. Bang! It was as if he had been struck by lightning. The terrifying attack spread from his fist to his entire body. Light and darkness intersected, and space was crazily pierced. Aurora's huge crown enveloped the void. Demonic Jade Huangzun was terrified. The terrifying saber energy pierced from all directions, leaving him with nowhere to hide. Ah! Rip! Demonic Jade Huangzun screamed in pain, and blood splattered everywhere. A bloody mist fell like rain. Demonic Jade Huangzun was injured in many places, and his black armor was riddled with holes. It had long been shattered beyond recognition. He tried his best to jump out of the cage, but the suppression of the huge crown was as heavy as a mountain and unstoppable. How can I lose to a peak divine master? On the battlefield of the supreme God world, even if I'm facing a low-level Huangzun, I can escape unscathed. Demonic Jade Huangzun had rich combat experience. He could advance and retreat freely on the battlefield of the supreme God world with the strength of a peak venerable. Naturally, he had a trump card. Demonic Jade Huangzun's bones instantly turned into blood, and pain appeared on his green face. He had only used this life-saving technique twice, even on the battlefield of the supreme god world. He did not expect to be forced to use it a third time. His opponent was merely a little fellow at the peak of the divine master realm. Blood transmutation mist. Every time he used it, demonic Jade Huang Zun's bloodline potential would be depleted. He would not use it unless he had no other choice. However, that terrifying saber light had already cut off his escape route. If he did not leave now, he would not be able to. He had never seen such a terrifying peak divine master before. He was simply a monster among monsters. Ah! A sharp howl resounded through the heavens. Empress Devil Jade's blood-red eyes stared fixedly at Lin Feng like an evil ghost. She let out an extremely furious roar. "I will return for revenge." "Revenge? You won't have the chance." Lin Feng's mournful bone saber was already surrounded by a bloody mist. It was as viscous as pus, and demonic Jade Huang Zun's aura had already turned into a bloody mist and was beginning to disappear. Demonic Jade's unique bloodline and outstanding life-saving ability. If it had been any other Huang Zun, they probably would not have been able to hold demonic Jade Huang Zun back. However, his opponent was Lin Feng. Kunling Heart Arrow, 9th level. Lin Feng's eyes turned into 9 sharp arrows. He was decisive and sharp. His soul attack was like 9 arrows that pierced out instantly. Demonic Jade Empress, who was wrapped in a huge crown of blade light, had nowhere to hide. Rip, rip, rip. The 9 arrows merged into one, and the perfect chaotic soul instantly exploded. The shattering spirit-killing book crushed demonic Jade Huang Zun's soul defense treasure. Facing a soul that had already activated its bloodline, the arrow pierced through, and the perfect chaotic soul displayed its terrifying power for the first time. Even though he was only using the 9th level of the Kunling Heart Arrow, its power was already extremely terrifying. Lin Feng's soul attack was definitely not weaker than a novice Huang Zun's. In fact, it was even stronger. Mournful, demonic Jade Huang Zun cried out in extreme pain. Even at the last moment before his consciousness disappeared, he still did not understand why he would die here. Why did a peak divine master human have such terrifying power? Why? Too many questions could not be answered. Demonic Jade Huang Zun's consciousness collapsed, and he died tragically on the spot. Gulp. Lin Feng swallowed the fruit of heaven and earth to recover his soul power. The boundless energy in his mind wrapped around his weak soul and quickly healed it. Lin Feng was no stranger to using the perfect chaotic soul for the first time. He had already simulated it countless times in his mind. This was his killing move, his trump card. It was like a blade of death. It would either not be unsheathed, or it would definitely kill the enemy. Do you think you can escape just because you want to? Lin Feng naturally would not give a novice Huang Zun the chance to take revenge. After all, he was too familiar with the burial ground of the Ian God. It was very dangerous to have such an enemy hiding in the dark. Since he had drawn his blade, he naturally had to eliminate the source of trouble. Chapter 2608. MOU Huang Zun did not die in vain. He was just a beginner Huang Zun who had just advanced. He was injured when facing 2-9 Hell's War Venerables. However, Lin Feng could easily kill 2-9 Hell's War Venerables. It was obvious that he was much stronger. Lin Feng's current physical control had reached 9 times. He was very close to perfect control of 10 times. Although there was no change in his mixed power realm and saber technique realm, his mixed power had increased slightly to 7 times. Lin Feng's current mixed power multiplier was close to 170,000 times that of Venerable. A beginner Huang Zun was 10,000 times to 100,000 times that of Venerable. A mid-level Huang Zun was 100,000 times to 1,000,000 times that of a Venerable. If Lin Feng had faced a beginner Huang Zun who had the Chaos Treasure, he might have had some trouble. However, it was not difficult for him to kill MOU Huang Zun, a beginner Huang Zun whose mixed power multiplier was only 30,000 times. MOU Huang Zun's defeat was not because he underestimated his opponent, but because he had not expected it. Even in the entire history of the universe, there were only a handful of peak almighty who could kill a beginner Huangzun. Oh, Lin Feng flipped through Mo Yu Huangzun's storage ring. A strong Huangzun had quite a lot of belongings. Although there were not many chaos gems, there were a lot of miscellaneous items. Among them were some treasures he had found in the burial ground of the Ian god. Lin Feng was familiar with them. No wonder I couldn't find many Nine Hells tribes. He took them all. Lin Feng flipped through Mo Yu Huangzun's records and information. His compass had a positioning function, and there were records of several Nine Hells tribes. When the time came, he could make a trip back. To Lin Feng, the Yellow Springs pool was the most useful. Although it was very likely that they were all from the Quan clan, he could not rule out the possibility of the Yellow Springs pool. No matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. Lin Feng would naturally not miss the opportunity to improve his foundation. Now his control over his weakest soul had reached 9. 3 times, which was comparable to Yuan Venerate Yunmin's control over his physical body. Oh, what is this? Lin Feng rummaged through the storage ring and took out a simple and unadorned journal. Its copper-yellow cover was engraved with Demon Race's characters. Lin Feng naturally recognized it and immediately opened it. The notes were very thin, much thinner than the books in the Nine Hell tribe. The words were very messy, and it recorded some of his thoughts. But they were all about the Yellow Springs secret realm. The characteristics of the burial ground of the Ian god, the identification of the direction, and the search for the Nine Hell tribe were recorded above. The location of the Nine Hell baleful energy was recorded, and the description of the coordinates could be roughly seen. He is indeed relying on this method to find the Nine Hell tribe. Lin Feng had previously thought of such a plan. He would guard the Nine Hell baleful energy and wait for the powerhouses of the Nine Hell tribe to come and take it. Then, he would follow them and find the Nine Hell tribe. However, this method was similar to waiting for an opportunity. Not only did it take a long time, but there was also a high possibility of being exposed if he followed them. The success rate was not high. Most importantly, it was extremely dangerous. If he barged into the extremely powerful Huang tribe, it would be like a sheep entering a tiger's den. He would only encounter an ordinary Nine Hell War Venerate whose combat strength was comparable to a low-level Huangzun. However, Nine Hell War Venerates were extremely powerful, and their combat strength was comparable to a mid-level Huangzun or even a high-level Huangzun. Those who could enter the Yellow Springs secret realm were generally only Venerates. Even if someone like Huangzun, who had broken through to become a Huangzun, he would only be a low-level Huangzun. Universe 7's Divine Inquisition. Lin Feng finally found some useful information from the notes and solved some of the mysteries in his heart. Blessed by the heavenly Tao, they have inherited 18 great eternity gods, 1,000 eternity gods, 20,000 divine inquisitors, and 1,000,000 executors. In the universe, it was a unique force that was independent of the 5 great giants and billions of other forces. Blessed by the heavenly Tao of the universe, they had all kinds of top-notch venerate inheritances. Once they cultivated to the limit, they would be bestowed with the heavenly Tao and be bestowed with the position of eternity god or even grand eternity god. Ordinary eternity gods were bestowed with the heavenly Tao, and their combat strength was comparable to a peak ultimate god. Grand eternity gods were bestowed with the heavenly Tao, and their combat strength was comparable to a peak Yuan Venerate. 1,000 peak ultimate gods and 18 peak Yuan Venerates? Lin Feng sighed. Even the 5 great giants did not have such a terrifying combat strength. For example, the 7th Mercenary Alliance had 14 Yuan Venerate powerhouses, but how many of them were peak Yuan Venerates? I have never heard of such a powerful force before. No wonder these eternity god skeletons contain the heavenly Tao's will, and their aura is so tyrannical. Every skeleton was a peak ultimate god. They were even stronger than his teacher, Supreme God Anqing. How'd they die? It seems like they were killed by the ancestors of the various tribes. Lin Feng flipped through the various ancient books of the Huang tribe and found that the eternity god skeletons buried in the Huang tribe had all died at the hands of the Nine Hell tribe. However, the question was the Nine Hell tribe that strong? Wasn't it said that the strongest in the Nine Hell tribe was only at the level of the Nine Hell War Venerate and Huang Zun? Lin Feng was puzzled. Given the strength of the Nine Hell tribe, how strong could Huang Zun be if they did not even have a peak ultimate treasure? How could he possibly kill eternity gods comparable to peak ultimate gods? Some of them had even killed two. How did he kill them? However, there was no answer in the journal. The scribbled journal only contained some insights before it was cut off abruptly. It was as if the writer of the journal had encountered an accident. I might have encountered the real Huang tribe. Lin Feng closed the journal and put away. The journal was very useful to experts like Mou and Huang Zun, but to him, it was only a supplement to some information. He knew the value of the Nine Hell evil energy, the eternity god skeletons, and a mysterious force in the universe. Universe 7's Divine Inquisition. A set of eternity god skeletons is worth 100,000 chaos gems. Lin Feng was also secretly surprised. The value was indeed incomparable. It was only a small sum for experts like his teacher, Supreme God Anqing, but it was undoubtedly a huge sum for ordinary venerables and even experts like Huang Zun. Even he was a little tempted. However, although he was tempted, Lin Feng did not plan to collect the eternity god skeletons even though he could do it. I can collect the eternity god skeletons by using my will to forcefully erase the heavenly Tao hidden in them. Lin Feng thought of the ancient demon god skeletons in Supreme God Yenwu's residence. They should be the eternity god skeletons whose heavenly Tao will have been erased. However, selling the skeletons of experts was still a dishonorable thing. He did not have the same interest as Supreme God Yenwu to move the skeletons into his residence as decorations. Since the 7th Mercenary Alliance had tacitly allowed the eternity god skeletons to stay here, there was no need for him to destroy them. Although the 7th Mercenary Alliance would not say anything if he took 1 or 2 skeletons, it did not mean much. Pursuing the limits of strength is the right thing to do. Lin Feng collected Mou and Huang Zun's belongings and immediately fell into the yellow spring pool. The Great Qin Emperor's origin pearl emitted a bright light and once again absorbed and strengthened his body. At this time, he was very close to having perfect control of his body by 10 times. Chapter 26:09. The closer one was to the limit, the more difficult it was to control one's body. The perfect venerable tenfold control was like a spring trying its best to reach it, but it was always lacking a little bit. The effect of the big yellow spring was gradually weakening. Of course, his soul control, sea of consciousness, and chaos power were still increasing. Lin Feng gained a lot every time he swept through a Huang family tribe, but it was getting more and more strenuous. This was because his strength was limited here. A peak divine master was like a shackle, making it difficult for him to use his strength. Just a little bit more. Lin Feng was injured in this round of attacks. This meant that the danger of entering the next Huang family tribe would increase, and he might even be defeated. Whoosh, the big yellow spring, was full of energy and covered his entire body. The only thing he lacked in control of his body was like a spark being ignited, burning his entire body. His blood vessels expanded, and majestic power spread throughout his body. The control of the perfect chaos body was extremely precise at this moment. The sky rumbled, thunder rumbled, and the universe's chaotic energy covered his entire body. This was a leap in the level of life and an increase in his perception of the heavenly way. This feeling became extremely clear in an instant. The heavenly way that was originally hidden due to the unique geographical environment of the Yellow Spring Secret Realm was now within reach. It was no different from when he was in the Taiqion God Realm, and it was even better. It's improved. Lin Feng knew that this was not a change in the environment of the Yellow Spring Secret Realm, but an increase in his perception. It covered the cover of the Yellow Spring Secret Realm and increased his perception of the heavenly way to a new level. It was enough to be comparable to, or even stronger than Huang Zun. Bang! Lin Feng punched out, and his heart moved. The feeling of chaos power was extremely clear, as if his veins were visible. The heavenly way of chaos power was laid out in front of him. The essence of the heavenly way was not hidden at all at this moment. Clang! The vicious saber morning bone was unsheathed. There was no energy or saber technique. There was only boundless and perfect chaos power. Endless power surged in, and the most primitive, ancient, ferocious beast wriggled and exploded. Lin Feng's chaos power suddenly appeared, and the chaotic airflow enveloped it, resonating with the world. Peak! The chaos heavenly Tao broke through the cage. Extreme control of one's physical body was an extreme control of the chaos heavenly Tao. Many experts like Huang Zun could not reach the peak of the chaos realm, but Lin Feng, a peak divine lord, had achieved it. Back then, Yuan Venerate Yunmin's chaotic strength sky path had only been perfect. That day, Hierarch Yinwu's chaos heavenly Tao realm was only perfect. This was a huge shackle for divine master cultivators. But Lin Feng had broken through. With the body of a human, he had stepped over the shackle. Sizzle, sizzle. Lin Feng held desolate bone in his hand. He felt completely different. The increase in strength seemed to have tamed the brutality of this ancient, ferocious beast, and it quietly lay dormant in the sparkling saber of perfect mixed forces. His chaos heavenly Tao realm had risen by an entire level. Although he had just stepped into it, it was a whole new realm. The perfect control of his physical body allowed Lin Feng to be reborn. He also had a whole new understanding of the last move of Aurora. In terms of attack power alone, I have reached the threshold of a high-level Huang Zun. When I completely grasp the peak chaos heavenly Tao realm, I'll be able to reach the level of a high-level Huang Zun. The perfect chaos heavenly Tao realm was 10 times the standard of a Venerate. The peak chaos heavenly Tao realm was 100 times the standard of a Venerate. The difference in combat power was like heaven and earth. Practicing the saber, comprehending the saber, and fighting. Nothing could improve one's strength faster than actual combat. Comprehending the peak chaos heavenly Tao realm, coupled with perfect control of his physical strength, made Lin Feng feel like a fish in water. He was unstoppable. He challenged one Huang family tribe after another. Although he would get injured every time, he would gain a lot every time. The peak chaos heavenly Tao realm was gradually stabilizing. Aurora's strongest move, the 10th move, was also slowly being comprehended. Lin Feng had even encountered the war sovereign of 9 hells, whose battle prowess was comparable to that of a mid-level sovereign master. Lin Feng had also killed him in a fierce battle. Out of the 36 Huang tribes, he had already swept through more than 20 of them. The obstacles he encountered were getting bigger and bigger, but Lin Feng's blade was also getting sharper. Screech! Screech! The fierce saber was clean and neat, and it quickly killed. After countless battles, Lin Feng had completely grasped the peak chaos heavenly Tao realm. His physical body's chaos heavenly Tao realm had reached 4 million times, which was the level of a high-level Huang Zun. High-level Huang Zun's physical body's chaos heavenly Tao realm was 1 million to 10 million times that of a Venerate. Lin Feng was naturally no match for a high-level Huang Zun, but against a mid-level Huang Zun, Lin Feng already had the strength to fight, even if he was facing a mid-level Huang Zun who had perfect control of the Chaos Treasure. As for 9 Hells War Venerate, he didn't even have a peak Chaos Heavenly Tao Realm True Treasure. His soul control had also increased to 9, 8 times with the help of the big yellow spring pool, getting closer and closer to the perfect 10 times. If he could sweep through all 36 Huang family tribes, Lin Feng was confident that he could reach the perfect 10 times. But it was too difficult to do. This is the limit. Lin Feng was bathed in blood, as if he was about to collapse. On the ground were the corpses of 5 9 Hells War Venerates and countless 8 Hells War Gods. This battle was more dangerous than any of the previous battles. He had almost lost. The Huang family tribes were getting stronger and stronger. It's time to enter the Yellow Spring Path. Lin Feng entered the big yellow spring pool. While quickly recovering his strength, he continued to strengthen his body. Although the yellow spring path was mysterious in the burial ground of the universe god, it was no longer a secret to Lin Feng, who had already swept through more than 20 Huang family tribes. If the burial ground of the universe god was seen as a constantly changing sphere, then the 36 Huang family tribes were like a beautiful curve in the center of the sphere, like waves connected together. Outside the sphere were the 72 Quan clan tribes. The yellow spring path was in the center of the sphere. Or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that at the very center was a passageway, a door that led to the yellow springs. It was very dangerous. Lin Feng remembered what Honorable God Yin Wu had told him. Once he entered the yellow spring path, he might not be able to turn back. This was the real yellow spring path, and there was a slim chance of survival. But if he wanted to know the secret of the yellow spring secret realm and the primordial chaos venerate, he had no other choice. If he continued to sweep through the Huang family tribes, he wouldn't get much information. He already knew what he needed to know. If he didn't know, even if he swept through more Huang family tribes, he still wouldn't get an answer. The final answer must be in the yellow spring path. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. When Lin Feng stepped into the yellow spring secret realm, he had already made up his mind. Since the heavens had arranged for him to walk on this path of the strong, he had to cut through all obstacles and be fearless. This was his own path. I want to become the primordial chaos venerate. Lin Feng had never been so determined. Chapter 26:10. After recovering to his peak state in the Huang Lu tribe, Lin Feng went deep into the earth's core. There were no more secrets in the burial ground of the Ian god, but the entire Yellow Spring secret realm was still shrouded in mystery. The mystery of the primal chaos venerable was still shrouded in clouds and mist. If he delayed any longer, the time would be even longer. Lin Feng knew that he was already very close to the limit of the Master God level, the limit of the universe's endless epics. Every step forward was extremely difficult. However, this did not mean that Lin Feng was willing to give up and lower his standards to become a primal chaos venerable or a perfect primal chaos venerable, even though this was already the best among the 7th-type venerables. There is also the existence of the primal chaos venerable, a super venerable that could even hide the universe's heavenly Tao's came from the mouth of an almighty, so it could not be false. As long as he could become stronger, he would do his best. Although Lin Feng was a human and was not a top race among the billions of races, the blood of the strong flowed in his body. He had the ambition to fight and inherited the strongest belief and persistence of the human race. Whoosh! After entering the Earth's core, the resistance gradually increased. Lin Feng did not use the 1,000-segmented needle to search because there was no need to. The coordinates of the Earth's core had already been determined, and there would not be any deviation. The only possibility was that the Yellow Spring Road was not in the Earth's core, and his judgment was wrong. However, the possibility was very small. His speed became slower and slower because the energy of the Yellow Spring Road was becoming more and more abundant. It was like a tenacious protection, not allowing anyone to get close. Lin Feng only spent a few years in the first half of the journey, but he only advanced a little after a few hundred years. Until he got close to the Earth's core, every step was difficult. From the area where the Huang tribe was to the Earth's core, with Lin Feng's current strength, it took him almost half an epoch. One could imagine, if it was an ordinary Huang Zun, he would not be able to come here at all. No wonder Venerable Yin Wu left in the end. Lin Feng finally understood that with Venerable Yin Wu's confidence and arrogance, there was no reason for him to give up the Yellow Spring Road. He was not someone who was afraid of death. An expert who could achieve the position of an invincible divine master must have the blood of ambition flowing in his body, unwilling to be left out. Only by having a thirst and wanting to become stronger could one become a true super expert. It was not that Venerable God Yin Wu did not want to enter the Yellow Springs Road, but that he could not. Because in the last part of the journey, without sufficient strength, one would not be able to overcome the pressure of the Yellow Springs energy. Clang, clang, clang. It was as if an ancient call was ringing in his heart. Lin Feng originally thought that it would take a bit of effort to search, but it didn't. Although the ancient call was weak, it was like a lighthouse on the sea, clearly guiding the way. There was no need to think too much about it. The gate to the Yellow Springs had been opened. Is it because I absorbed the energy of the Yellow Springs pool? Or is it something else? Lin Feng wanted to know the reason. Why did the Yellow Springs Road give him such a unique attraction? Why did it feel like it was calling him? All the mysteries seemed to be welcoming a turning point. Lin Feng believed that everything would come to a conclusion on the road to the Yellow Springs. The rolling water of the Yellow Springs was filled with rich energy of the Yellow Springs, flowing like the blood of a giant. The water of the Yellow Springs was not turbid, but there were small particles contained in it, like stars falling into the sea. The water of the Yellow Springs flowed in the 9 endless abyss, containing the mysteries of the universe. The flowing speed was not fast, but it moistened things silently. The 9 abyss released a misty fog under the watering of the water of the Yellow Springs. If Lin Feng saw it, he would recognize it. It was the unique treasure of the Yellow Springs' secret realm, the 9 Hells' evil chi. It used the energy of the Yellow Springs as its source, originating from the Yellow Springs Road. The 9 Hells' evil chi spread in the 9 endless abyss, like the clouds in the sky. If a cultivator did not have a strong will, they would not be able to resist the omnipresent 9 Hells' evil chi. Every endless abyss was extremely mysterious, as if it contained a big secret. Looking from afar, in the majestic 9 Hells' evil chi, there seemed to be all kinds of life forms, including humans, demons, and special life forms in the universe. In front of every endless abyss, there was a 9 Hells' war venerable guarding. Their faces were cold and meticulous, like soldiers. However, they did not hide their auras. Instead, they released them completely, as if they were ready to fight at any time. These 9 Hells' war venerables were different from the ones outside. They were wearing a set of special armor that covered their whole body, and there were gloves on their hands. However, they were not pinnacle true treasures, nor were they chaos true treasures. They were special materials and energy. They were very different, but they seemed to fit the 9 Hells clan. If Lin Feng saw them, he would be shocked. This was because he had killed too many 9 Hells war venerables, including those with beginner Huang Zun strength and those with intermediate Huang Zun strength. However, these 9 Hells war venerables all had the aura of pinnacle Huang Zun, and they were well equipped. They were definitely not ordinary pinnacle Huang Zun. The 9 Hells clan was very good at fighting. If they were equipped with matching equipment, their combat power would increase by more than one level. At the bottom of the abyss, where the endless energy of the Yellow Spring gathered, 2 well-dressed elders of the 9 Hells clan were stroking their beards and looking into the distance. The horns on their heads were bent, as if they had been crushed by the endless years. However, they were not black like the 9 Hells war venerables, but a kind of transparent black like the water of the Yellow Spring that contained stars. In the middle of their heads, there was also a spiral horn like a unicorn's, but it was different from the 9 wheels of the 9 Hells war venerables. Their whirlpools were even closer to one. There seemed to be 10 wheels, but the last wheel was not complete, as if it was blocked by some force. Even so, it was much more powerful than the 9 wheels of the 9 Hells war venerables. Huang Yu and Huang Zhou. According to the records of the 9 Hells clan, they were the first 2 descendants of Father God. Furthermore, their tribes were ranked first and second among the 36 Huang clan tribes. After thousands of eras, the 2 ancient experts, Huang Yu and Huang Zhou, were still alive. Another one. Huang Yu narrowed his eyes and smiled, stroking his long white beard. The genius of the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Huang Zhou's face was stiff and cold, and his short black beard looked very capable. How long has it been? Huang Yu looked at the 7th abyss of 9 Hells. 12,700 eras. Huang Zhou looked at the 7th abyss of 9 Hells surrounded by the 9 Hells' evil energy. The last one was a special life form, absolute chi. He is also the one who has gone the furthest. He should be breaking through soon. Huang Yu narrowed his eyes and sneered. It has been 6,600 eras since he entered the seventh abyss of 9 hells. Huang Zhou nodded. Soon, Huang Yu laughed. In thousands of eras, only a few people have entered the 8th abyss of 9 hells. Huang Zhou said coldly. It doesn't mean anything even if he did. Huang Yu rolled his eyes. Be serious. This is our mission. Huang Zhou ignored him. We are here. Let's welcome the new guest. Chapter 2611. This place has such a strong, murderous aura. Lin Feng stepped on this strange land. His surroundings were misty. As soon as he entered, he could feel the majestic energy of the Yellow Spring. It was much stronger than the burial ground of the Ian god, but the strongest was the murderous aura that directly entered his mind. The 9 hells' murderous aura. Lin Feng had absorbed more than 1 bottle of the 9 hells' murderous aura, so he knew that a small bottle could cause a huge impact on his willpower. But here, there was so much 9 hells' murderous aura, it could be said that it was inexhaustible. According to the ancient records, the 9 hells' murderous aura comes from the 9 hells' abyss. It's true. Lin Feng stepped on the rugged and soft land and looked at the rolling water of the Yellow Spring. There were beautiful stars hidden in it, and the energy was vigorous. So, this is the water of the Yellow Spring. Lin Feng stood still. He could clearly feel the energy contained in the water of the Yellow Spring. It was as if a mother was pregnant with her child, and the beautiful stars were her children, and they contained the energy of the Yellow Spring. Where is the 9 hells abyss? Lin Feng knew from the ancient records of the Huang tribe that the Yellow Spring Road had a long winding water and the 9 hells abyss that supported the entire Yellow Spring Road. This was the cradle of the 9 hells tribe. So to the 9 hells tribe, the Yellow Spring Road was their sacred place. Is it there? Lin Feng looked into the distance, but he couldn't see anything. The 9 hells' murderous aura was too strong, and it covered everything. He could only guess from the direction of the water of the Yellow Spring. Although he didn't know what the 9 hells abyss was, the secret he wanted to know was either related to the water of the Yellow Spring or the 9 hells abyss. Lin Feng was surprised. In the distance, 2 sage-like figures slowly walked out of the murderous aura. Their clothes fluttered in the wind. The old man on the left had a kind smile on his face, and his white beard fluttered in the wind. The old man on the right had fierce eyes and a short black beard. 9 hells war venerables? That's not right. Lin Feng recognized the characteristics of the 9 prison clan. However, the 2 old men in front of him were obviously different from the war venerables of 9 purgatories that he knew. Their horns were black and sparkling, and the revolving wheels on their foreheads were larger than the 9 wheels of the war venerables of 9 purgatories. The most frightening thing was that their auras were completely undetectable. Even though they were both 9 hells war venerables, the difference in strength could be huge. The beginner Huang Zun was also Huang Zun, and the advanced Huang Zun was also Huang Zun. The 2 sage-like old men in front of him were even. He had already surpassed the war sovereign of 9 hells. Isn't it said that the strongest person in the 9 hell tribe is the 9 hell war sovereign? Lin Feng was also helpless at this moment. He could only watch helplessly as he bumped into them. He didn't even have a place to escape. Moreover, these 2 9 hell tribe elders seemed to know his position and came prepared. There was no way they could beat him. Lin Feng wasn't even interested in fighting. How could 2 9 hell tribe elders who might be stronger than his teacher, Supreme God Anqing, fight? Greetings, seniors. Lin Feng cupped his hands and spoke the language of the 9 hell tribe. Oh, the white-bearded old man and the black-bearded old man looked at each other in surprise. They hadn't expected Lin Feng to know the language of the 9 hell tribe. What's your name? The white-bearded old man, Huang Yu, asked with a smile. I'm Lin Feng from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Lin Feng tactfully introduced himself. Although the 9 hell tribe seemed to have a great enmity with the 7th Mercenary Alliance, he didn't think so. No matter how mysterious the road to the underworld was, it couldn't be hidden from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. The 7th Mercenary Alliance had a total of 14 Yuan Venerables. Among them, there were even Yuan Venerables like Yuan Venerate Yunmen, who stood at the peak of the Yuan Venerate. Therefore, everything that the Nine Hell tribe possessed was actually within the scope of the 7th Mercenary Alliance's tacit consent. This included the 2 old men who surpassed the 9 Hell War Venerables. You are the first human from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. The white-bearded old man, Huang Yu, chuckled. He didn't seem surprised that Lin Feng had come from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Human? First? Lin Feng was stunned. There was too much hidden information in the white-bearded old man's words. It doesn't matter if you are from the 7th Mercenary Alliance or not. You have to abide by the rules of the road to the underworld. The black-bearded old man spoke for the first time. Please speak, senior. Lin Feng nodded. The black-bearded old man's eyes flashed. Those who are not almighty will be killed without mercy. Oh, Lin Feng was shocked. The black-bearded old man ignored Lin Feng and continued. There is no way out of the road to the underworld. You either walk out of the 9 Hell Abyss or die here. It was either life or death. Moreover, there was only one way out. The 9 Hell Abyss. I would like to ask if any almighty cultivator has ever walked out of the 9 Hell Abyss. Lin Feng, on the other hand, was calm at this moment. All the clues from before were like fragments that were gradually pieced together, forming a network. No, the black-bearded old man's words were simple and direct. Lin Feng nodded. He knew it wasn't easy to become a primordial chaos venerable. Little guy, do you want to become a primordial chaos venerable? The white-bearded old man suddenly spoke. He smiled as if he had seen through everything. However, what surprised Lin Feng wasn't this, but the fact that he could say the words primordial chaos venerable directly. Moreover, there was no will of the heavenly Tao or any strange phenomenon. Senior, how do you know? Lin Feng asked. The white-bearded old man laughed. Everyone who came here is here for the primordial chaos venerable. You are not the only super genius from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Look, the one from 12,700 eras is still here. 12,700 eras? Lin Feng's eyes widened. That was too long. No wonder no cultivator had ever walked out of the 9 Hell Abyss. That was the super genius from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. He was still trapped here for 12,700 eras. It was quite a trap. Elder Ancestor really gave me an impossible mission. Lin Feng sighed. He didn't think too much about it. Instead, his fighting spirit was aroused. He always liked challenges and turned the impossible into possible. Moreover, the more impossible the mission was, the more bountiful the reward would be once it was completed. Honorable God, Yin Wu stayed in the universe God's burial ground for 17 eras. When he entered, he had planned for 10 eras. However, it seemed unrealistic now. 10 eras was not even a fraction of 12,700 eras. The Milky Way super black hole was about to enter the period of destruction. By then, it would be too late to save it. Although his teacher had given him 1,000 chaos gems, and he had bought many treasures to slow down the decline of the Milky Way super black hole, it was only a temporary solution. However, 10 eras was already the limit. If I still can't leave the Yellow Spring path by then, I can only ask my teacher for help. Lin Feng had a clone on Earth to protect and accompany his family. Although he didn't like to ask for help, he had no choice when the time came. I hope I can walk out in 10 eras. Chapter 26:12. Lin Feng didn't want to give up this opportunity. Of course, he didn't have a choice. The black-bearded elder had already made it clear that he could either walk out of the 9 Hells Abyss or die here. There was only one way out of the Yellow Springs Abyss, and that was to go through the 9 Hells Abyss. The super genius of the 7th Mercenary Alliance from 12,700 eras was still trapped inside. Senior, how many almighty cultivators are there in the 9 Hells Abyss? Lin Feng looked at the white-bearded elder curiously. He seemed to be easier to talk to than the black-bearded elder. 15. The white-bearded elder narrowed his eyes and answered without thinking. The earliest one is from 180,000 years ago. The latest one is from the 33rd era. Lin Feng was speechless. He thought that 12,700 eras was a lot. He didn't expect there to be one from 180,000 years ago. And among them, there was only one from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. So, It's not only the super geniuses of the 7th Mercenary Alliance who can enter. Lin Feng understood. Although the Yellow Springs secret realm was controlled by the 7th Mercenary Alliance, there seemed to be many secrets that he didn't know about. Among the 15 cultivators, only one was from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Senior, what is the Nine Hells Abyss? How dangerous is it? Lin Feng asked shamelessly. The white-bearded elder put his hands behind his back and said with a smile, "Even if you don't ask, Old Black will tell you." Old Black? Lin Feng was slightly stunned. He looked at the black-bearded elder unconsciously. The latter's face turned green. His stiff face twitched, as if he was unhappy with this title. But he didn't say anything. He said with a serious face, "The Nine Hells Abyss was created by the Father God, Yellow Springs. If you want to become a primordial chaos venerable, you have to pass through all 9 chaos abyss. The 9 chaos abyss are not a test. They're the 9 harsh conditions to become a primordial chaos venerable. After entering, the guardians of each chaos abyss will tell you the details. Apart from the last 2, the rest of the 9 hells abyss are not too dangerous. You just have to pay attention to the 9 hells evil chi. Everything you want to know is in the 9th chaos abyss. If you can enter, you will know everything. You don't have to ask anything else." The black-bearded old man closed his eyes and didn't say anything else. It was as if he had fulfilled all his responsibilities. Father God, Yellow Springs. Therefore, this place was named the Netherworld Mystic Realm. To become an Origin Chaos Venerable, one had to fulfill 9 strict conditions. Although the black-bearded old man's words were short, each and every one of them was like a gem. The shock it brought to Lin Feng wasn't any less. But just as he had guessed, all the answers lay in the Yellow Springs Road in the 9 Hells Abyss. However, no cultivator had ever succeeded. Becoming an Origin Primal Chaos Venerable was harder than he had expected. The white-bearded old man was still smiling. He looked at Lin Feng and said, "Do you have any other questions, little guy? If not, I'll send you there." Lin Feng pondered and said, "Please forgive me for being presumptuous. May I ask if Senior's father is the Primal Chaos Venerable?" The white-bearded old man smiled, but this time there was a different emotion hidden in his smile. It seemed to be pride, bitterness, and an indescribable coldness. "Yes. Okay, Senior. I have no more questions." Lin Feng didn't say anything else. He already knew what he wanted to know. There was no point in asking anything else. Everything would be revealed when he reached the 9th abyss of chaos. Although he wasn't sure of everything, the Netherworld Mystic Realm, the burial ground of Ian God, and everything he had seen in the Yellow Springs Road, all the clues and fragments had gradually formed. He already had an answer in his heart. "Then go." The white-bearded old man smiled. He waved his hand, and the surrounding space fluctuated. The 9 hells evil chi moved aside, revealing a path. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly became clear. It was a path that led to the 9 hells abyss, straight to the Yellow Springs. Lin Feng nodded and stepped in without hesitation. The 9 hells abyss of chaos were already far away. They were misty and boundless and deep. It was like the end of the universe, like the origin of the world, filled with the ultimate mysteries of the universe. The 9 hells abyss. A newcomer? Another one who isn't afraid of death. Haha, he looks like a human. A puny human dares to challenge the 9 hells abyss. He's courting death. The cultivators hidden in the misty evil chi were faintly discernible. There was only one path that led to the 9 hells abyss, and it was clearly visible. Just as the black-bearded old man, Huang Zhou, had said, this was a path to the Yellow Springs. Once one stepped in, there was no turning back. One could either walk out of the 9 hells abyss or die here. There were 15 divine masters in the 9 hells abyss of chaos. They were mostly gathered in the 5th and 6th hells abyss of chaos. There was one in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th hells abyss of chaos. There were 2 in the 7th hells abyss of chaos. The 8th and 9th hells abyss of chaos were so deep that they couldn't be seen at all. In the 7th hells abyss of chaos, an ape-man with white hair all over his body laughed wildly. Zhu Qi, there's a newcomer. At the bottom of the abyss, endless evil chi shrouded the abyss and echoed. You've been cultivating for more than 10,000 years. Aren't you bored? The white-haired ape-man shook his head and took out a bottle of wine from his bosom. One mouthful after another. The white-haired ape-man's face was red. He would occasionally sing loudly and talk to himself. It seemed like he was talking to someone, but he didn't get any response. However, he was already used to it and didn't care. But suddenly, the white-haired ape-man stopped and looked at the bottom of the abyss in surprise. A slender figure slowly walked out. His expression was as usual, calm and composed. His long hair hung down to his waist like willow branches. A pair of eyes flashed with exquisite light. A unique life form in the universe. Ju Chi won 2700 years ago. The universe war champion. Can I have a sip? Ju Chi asked the white-haired ape-man. His calm voice had a faint confidence. Yes. The white-haired ape-man was rather straightforward. Ju Chi raised his head and drank a few mouthfuls. His eyes flashed with a burning luster. The ancient Earth Ape Clan's Saint Bo wine is indeed worthy of its reputation. Good wine. Here. Ju Chi didn't drink too much and passed it back to the white-haired ape-man. Haha, of course. The white-haired ape-man was rather proud. He kept the wine bottle and looked at Ju Chi. After thousands of years in seclusion, you seem to have gained a lot? Ju Chi smiled indifferently. I haven't succeeded. How can I gain anything? See you never, Ape King. Finishing his words, Ju Chi stepped out. His figure slowly disappeared into the misty, baleful aura. The white-haired ape-man's eyes were wide open. He was completely shocked. This guy, he met the requirements. There was only one way to leave the chaos abyss after entering. That was to meet the requirements and pass the test. Such a powerful guy. He entered the seventh chaos abyss less than 10,000 years and met the requirements. The white-haired ape-man sighed. He entered the seventh chaos abyss 100,000 years earlier than Ju Chi, but was still trapped here. Maybe he will be the first to pass the 9 hell abyss. That's good too. Then I'll be free. Chapter 26:13. The path to the 9 hells abyss was very long. Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry. He walked slowly and observed the only path to the Yellow Springs. The water of the Yellow Springs was like a winding dragon, flowing in the 9 hells abyss like blood, forming the main veins of the path to the Yellow Springs. The misty 9 hells evil chi would occasionally enter his mind, but it didn't cause much trouble for Lin Feng. With his current willpower, he could easily resist it. The evil chi in the 9 hells abyss is much thicker. Lin Feng gazed into the distance. The 9 hells baleful chi was clearly in a state of increasing intensity, and it became denser the further he went. When he arrived at the 8th abyss of chaos, the 9 hells baleful chi had accumulated to an extremely shocking level. If he entered the 8th abyss now, Lin Feng wasn't confident that he could resist the terrifying 9 hells evil chi. It was like a huge mountain of sand and rocks. Its power was too terrifying. Take it slow. Start from the 9 hells evil chi in the 1st abyss. I should be able to withstand it by the 8th abyss. Lin Feng remembered the black-bearded elder's words. Step by step was the right way. There were only 2 dangers in the 9 hells abyss. One was the last 2 abyss, and the other was the 9 hells evil chi. In front of him, at the end of the passage, was the 1st abyss. A fully armed 9 hells war venerable stood there. His eyes were cold, and his armor resonated with the energy of the Yellow Springs, shining with a strange light. He was also a 9 hells war venerable, but he was different from the ones in the Huang tribe. This 9 hells war venerable was much stronger. Greetings, guardian of the abyss. Lin Feng bowed. As the saying went, no one would be offended by too much courtesy. The universe's heavenly Tao, the laws of nature. Go to the bottom of the abyss and sense the universe's energy. You can leave after you get the token. The abyss guardian was expressionless and cold, as if it was a routine. His appearance was exactly the same as the black-bearded elder. Okay, Lin Feng nodded. Although he didn't know the details, he didn't seem to be able to get anything out of it. He would know how to get the token after he entered the abyss. When he looked at the other abyss, the 15 divine masters were gathered at the back. Obviously, the abyss in front wasn't that difficult. Since they were able to pass through it, he naturally wouldn't have any problems either. As he stepped into the first abyss of primal chaos, he was greeted by the dense, baleful energy of the nine hells. The baleful energy of the nine hells was extremely rare in the burial ground of the Aeon God, and it could be found everywhere here. It had a great effect on strengthening one's will. However, once it was strengthened to a certain extent, the effects would begin to weaken. It was just like eating the same fruit of heaven and earth. After eating a certain amount, the body would naturally become immune to it, and the effects would be negligible. Lin Feng was already mentally prepared when he was walking slowly in the Yellow Springs passageway. He was completely used to it. The nine hells' baneful chi in the first abyss of chaos was the most ordinary. As they went down, although there was still a dense nine hells' baleful chi, it was as if they had left the Yellow Spring Road and left the Yellow Spring mystic realm. The heavenly axioms since became more and more intense, as if they had walked out of the pitch-black room. Outside, the sun was shining brightly, like a spring breeze. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth. Lin Feng could clearly sense the inferior laws. This place was completely different from the burial ground of the Aeon God. The energy of the Yellow Springs seemed to have completely disappeared. On the contrary, the energy of the universe became clearer and clearer. Go to the bottom of the abyss and sense the energy of the universe. At this moment, Lin Feng finally understood what the Abyss Guardian meant. However, he still didn't know why the first abyss of chaos was so special and how it was related to the primordial chaos supremacy. The first requirement was usually the easiest to achieve. Earth, thunder, wind, light, darkness. Lin Feng could clearly sense the superior laws. Every law was scattered and landed in various parts of the abyss of chaos, as if they were residents here. The sense here was much clearer than in the Taichung sovereign god realm. Of course, now that his life level had increased, his sense of the heavenly axiom had become much stronger. As he went down, the nine hells' baleful chi became denser. The intermediate laws of yin and yang were especially clear and easier to sense than the superior laws. Even if his intermediate laws of yin and yang were far inferior to light and darkness, they were still quite impressive. Many of the nine hells' race are proficient in the myriad heavenly axiom, which is the fusion of yin and yang heavenly axiom. The Yellow Springs is their father god, and his talent is inherited. Therefore, the Yellow Springs cultivates the myriad heavenly axiom of yin and yang. The nine hells abyss was built by the Yellow Springs. The myriad heavenly axioms of yin and yang were naturally the clearest. Thud! There was an echo in the empty valley, and his feet landed on the ground. Oh! Lin Feng felt as if he had reached the end of the abyss of chaos. The majestic energy of the universe mixed together like stars in the sky. There was a huge light screen in front of him that contained energy like the water of the Yellow Springs. Looking past the light screen, he saw a crystal water droplet that looked like a teardrop, transparent and perfect. What a familiar energy. Lin Feng looked at the crystal teardrop, and the Qin Emperor's origin pearl on the big Yellow Springs suddenly appeared in his mind. The two seemed to be of the same origin, but there were also differences. If I'm not wrong, this should be the token. Lin Feng hesitated for a moment, then reached out and directly touched the huge light screen. The water rippled, and a majestic energy entered from his arm. The light was dense and poured into his body. Whoosh! Lin Feng's body shook. That feeling was as if someone had used a lamp to illuminate his body, so he couldn't hide anything. Bang! A powerful rebounding force instantly appeared. There was no way to resist. It was like the power of the universe, and it directly pushed Lin Feng away. Information entered his mind clearly. Lin Feng's eyes widened, and he turned around and stepped on the ground. Cultivate, comprehend, and cultivate the myriad phenomena heavenly Tao, until he could pass through this myriad phenomena wall and obtain the token. Understood. The transmission of consciousness made Lin Feng completely understand the first and most basic condition for primordial chaos supremacy. Comprehend the heavenly Tao of the universe to a certain level. Primordial chaos supremacy was the pinnacle of supremacies. It naturally required all kinds of harsh requirements. It could be said to be the sublimation and perfection of primordial chaos supremacy. To become a primordial chaos supremacy, one had to master 5 heavenly Taos at the same time: time, space, strength, energy, and soul. Primordial chaos supremacy also needed to master the heavenly Tao of the universe's energy, and the requirements were even higher than primordial chaos supremacy. It wasn't enough to just comprehend the myriad phenomena heavenly Tao. To me, the difference isn't that big. Lin Feng was very clear. The myriad phenomena heavenly Tao he cultivated was already one of the best, the 9 heavens of light and darkness. The 4th level was already close to the requirements of primordial chaos supremacy. It was comparable to the 9th level of space or time heavenly Tao mystic techniques. If he could cultivate the 5th level, he would definitely be able to complete the requirements of the heavenly Tao of the universe's energy. The first chaos abyss is simple. Lin Feng smiled. Chapter 26:14. Lin Feng was deeply rooted in his ancestors' Wan Qian path. He had already cultivated the 4th heaven of the 9 heavens of light and darkness to its limit. He had condensed 9,999 light origins and 9,999 darkness origins. It could be said that this 4th heaven of light and darkness origins was one of the strongest powers in the myriad manifestations, heavenly Tao at the Divine Master level. The 5th level of the light and darkness 9 heavens condensed 19,999 light origins and 19,999 darkness origins. In terms of heaven path laws alone, it was comparable to a 10th level technique of time or space, and its power was far beyond ordinary 10th level techniques. Previously, I was busy comprehending blade techniques and improving my life level, so I didn't concentrate on cultivation. Now it's just right. Lin Feng walked up from the bottom of the first chaos abyss. Comprehending blade techniques to improve his combat power was one of the reasons. On the other hand, he was afraid that breaking through the 5th level of the light and darkness 9 heavens would cause him to become a universe knight, so he put it aside. He had comprehended it a long time ago. Now that his life level had been upgraded, his perception of the light and darkness heavenly paths was much stronger than before. It's here. Lin Feng came to the middle of the chaos abyss, where the perception of superior laws was the strongest. Soon, he found a light heavenly path, calmed down, and sat down cross-legged. Hua! His consciousness went straight to the sky without any obstruction. Without the concealment of the energy of the yellow springs, and without the obstruction of the heavenly Tao, it was as if he had directly arrived at the world of light and could clearly sense every heavenly Tao. The 100,000 light source points merged into the sea of light, and Lin Feng was deeply immersed in them. On the road to the yellow spring, Huang Yu and Huang Zhou looked at the 9 hells abyss and nodded for some time. Juku has entered the 8th chaos abyss. The white-bearded elder, Huang Yu, smiled and was satisfied. It doesn't mean anything. Huang Zhou was expressionless. Huang Yu squinted and laughed. Why are you so concerned if it doesn't mean anything? Old Black, you don't mean what you say. I've told you tens of thousands of times. Don't call me Old Black. Huang Zhou frowned and was slightly unhappy. Huang Yu squinted and stroked his long beard. Old Black, the little ape you thought highly of has been trapped in the 7th chaos abyss for 100,000 eras. In another 100,000 eras, he will be able to break through. Huang Zhou said coldly, speed doesn't mean anything. Primordial chaos venerables don't prioritize those who reach the top. There was once someone who entered the 8th abyss of primordial chaos even faster. What was the result? Huang Yu chuckled. I didn't say anything. Don't be so agitated. Old Hey, calm down. Huang Zhou snorted and crossed his arms over his chest, ignoring Huang Yu. As the son of Godfather, he was ranked 2nd and was inferior to Huang Yu in all aspects, so he was not in a good mood. Huang Yu didn't care about Huang Zhou's indifference. He had been used to it for tens of thousands of years. He muttered to himself, I wonder how much potential this brat from the 7th Mercenary Alliance has. Hearing this, Huang Zhou's expression relaxed slightly. Although he is a human, his talent and temperament are superior to Zhuho's. Within 1,000 eras, he will definitely enter the 8th abyss of chaos. Oh, is that so? Huang Yu raised his eyebrows and chuckled. I think 300 eras is enough. Impossible. Huang Zhou frowned. Huang Yu stroked his long beard and laughed heartily. He didn't try to defend himself. In the 9 Hell Abyss, after countless eras, there were still 15 divine master cultivators alive. All of them were risking their lives for the origin primal chaos venerable. Among them, there was the ancient great earth ape who entered 180,000 eras. There was also the imperial monster clan who entered 130,000 eras. Most of them had only entered for tens of thousands of eras, because those who had entered for more than 100,000 eras had absorbed too much 9 hell baleful chi. Their wills eventually collapsed. Endless cultivation was also very boring. Therefore, every matter that happened in the 9 Hell Abyss was talked about enthusiastically by the cultivators. For example, Zhuho entering the 8th Abyss of Chaos. Another example was the new human who had difficulty in the 1st Abyss of Chaos. Too lame. Yeah, just the 1st Abyss of Chaos took more than 1 era. After that, the difficulty of each abyss increased tenfold. Back then, I passed the 1st Abyss of Chaos in seconds. What's the use? Aren't you still in the 5th Abyss of Chaos, unable to move like a turtle? Get lost. Stupid loquat. You're not any better than me. I passed the first 3 Abyss of Chaos in one go. The 4th Abyss only took half an era, and the 5th Abyss only took 7 eras. The divine master cultivators who were hidden in the 9 hell baleful chi were having a heated discussion. Even the weakest among them was much stronger than the Catfish King in the Space War. They were the top divine master cultivators in the entire universe. However, it was precisely because of this that they had chosen an almost impossible path. The more talented one was, the more arrogant they were. However, after entering the road to the underworld, they realized that they were not omnipotent. In the entire universe, there were divine master cultivators who were stronger than them. This road to the underworld alone had buried countless super geniuses in tens of thousands of eras. However, there was no turning back for them. After entering the road to the underworld, they would either walk out of the 9 hell abyss or they would die here. The 1st Abyss of Chaos. So that's how it is. My ancestor is really a genius to be able to create such a perfect, all-creation heavenly way like the 9 heavens of light and darkness. Straight to the limits of the universe. Lin Feng couldn't help but exclaim. The stronger one was, the higher one's level, the more one would discover the profoundness of Wan Qian path. It was definitely not easy to combine the 19999 mutually exclusive origin points of light and darkness. The difficult part wasn't the 19999 origin points. It was the combination. The more they were combined, the more difficult it was. It was like lining up. It was easy for 10 people to line up without any difference. However, what about 1,000 people? It was much more difficult. However, the difficulty of lining up 40,000 people was not an ordinary level of difficulty, especially when these 40,000 people were like fire and water. Hence, even though Lin Feng only took a few hundred years to comprehend the light and darkness heavenly ways respectively, it took him an entire era to achieve mastery and complete the breakthrough. The power is slightly inferior to the pinnacle of mixed strength heavenly way. Lin Feng gave a try. Even though the 5th level of light and darkness heavenly way was much more powerful, it was still a breakthrough to become a universe knight. There were shackles and upper limits to the power of laws. It was just like the 10th level heavenly way secret techniques of space and time. This was more of an understanding of the heavenly way laws and energy. Actually, with my current comprehension of the heavenly way, I can totally cultivate the 6th level of light and darkness heavenly way. Lin Feng returned to the bottom of the first abyss of chaos. Although he thought so, it wasn't the right time. If he still couldn't pass through this wall of nature, it wouldn't be too late to return to cultivate. After all, Lin Feng still hoped to cross the 9 abyss of chaos within 10 eras. Shua! He reached his hand in again. Lin Feng was already very confident about this. Chapter 26:15. The huge light screen rippled, and a majestic energy entered through his arm. This time, Lin Feng was naturally prepared. Light filled his entire body, illuminating it with a unique energy. He was as omnipotent as an almighty being, and there was no resistance at all. The light screen disappeared before his eyes, and Lin Feng's entire body easily entered. He passed through the nature wall. A passed. Lin Feng was not surprised. Although the primal chaos venerables requirement for the nature way were higher than normal primal chaos venerables, the 5th heaven of light and darkness was enough. Moreover, there was nothing to worry about. Even if he couldn't pass, he was confident that he could comprehend the 6th heaven of light and darkness. Token. Lin Feng took the crystal water droplet, which was like a teardrop. This time, he could feel it more clearly than when he was separated by the nature wall. It was indeed of the same origin as the Qin Emperor's origin pearl, and had the same strange energy. However, it seemed that he had been in the 9 hell baleful qi for too long, and he could faintly feel that there was a similar energy in the crystal water droplet. Was it an illusion? It's time to go to the 2nd chaos abyss. Lin Feng did not think too much. No matter what it was made of, since it was a token, he could just hand it over. It was not like he could take it for himself. He returned from the bottom of the chaos abyss. Although more than an era had passed, there were still no changes in the 9 hell abyss, and no new divine master cultivators had arrived. Token. Lin Feng handed over the crystal water droplet. The abyss guardian's cold eyes glanced at it, and then half of his body moved aside, making a path. Lin Feng was slightly surprised. He looked at the token in his hand, and then looked at the abyss guardian. You're not taking it? The abyss guardian did not look at Lin Feng and replied coldly. This is a gift from Father God to every challenger. Refine it directly to strengthen your will and better resist the 9 hell baleful qi. Oh, Lin Feng nodded. Okay, thank you. Lin Feng smiled at the abyssal guardian and walked past him. The hazy, baleful energy of the 9 hells drifted along the Yellow Springs Road, adding a lot of tranquility and ghosts to it. As Lin Feng stepped onto the Yellow Springs Road that ran through the 9 hells abyss, the eyes of the divine masters in the abyss of primal chaos lit up. Past. It took a little more than an era. It's barely enough. I wonder how long the next chaos abyss will take. Lin Feng naturally could not hear the discussions in the abyss of chaos. While adapting to the rich 9 hells baleful qi, he swallowed the translucent water droplets and refined them. Since it was a good thing, he shouldn't waste it. No one would complain about having too much strength increase. Moreover, it could resist the 9 hells baleful qi. Although he had been like a fish in water in the first chaos abyss, it did not mean that he would have an easy time in the subsequent chaos abyss. The 9 hells baleful energy was everywhere. Even when he was cultivating, it would affect his consciousness. If he was distracted by resisting the 9 hells baleful qi, it would affect his cultivation progress. A rich fragrance filled his mouth. The translucent water droplets turned into boundless energy that directly penetrated his soul, perfectly nourishing him. He could clearly feel the improvement of his willpower. It was completely different from when he was in the burial ground of the Ian god. A small translucent water droplet was actually so special. Not bad. Lin Feng walked forward while absorbing the water droplets to strengthen his willpower. This treasure that could directly improve his willpower was unheard of in the universe, but he had seen it in the Yellow Springs secret realm. First, it was the 9 hells baleful qi. Now it was this translucent water droplet. It was much more precious than the 9 hells baleful qi. It had no side effects at all. At the end of the tunnel was the 2nd chaos abyss. A fully armed 9 hells war venerable stood there. His eyes were cold, and the armor on his body shone with a strange luster. It was exactly the same as the first Chaos Guardian. Greetings, Abyssal Guardian. Lin Feng bowed. The universe's heavenly Tao. Time is the wheel. After comprehending the 10th level Heavenly Tao secret technique and obtaining the token, you may leave. The Abyssal Guardian's expression was still cold. Lin Feng did not say anything. He responded and directly entered the second Chaos Abyss. Although the Nine Hells' baleful chi here was more than twice as dense as the first Chaos Abyss, it was still calm. It won't affect my cultivation, Lin Feng quickly determined. Even if he did not refine the translucent water droplet, he was confident that he could easily resist it. After refining it, it would be even easier. Supremacy Primal Chaos only needs to comprehend the 9th level Heavenly Tao secret technique. Supremacy Primal Chaos only needs to comprehend the 10th level Heavenly Tao secret technique. Lin Feng stepped into the Chaos Abyss. When he was cultivating saber arts, he had comprehended the 10th level Heavenly Tao secret technique, time stop, but it had not reached perfection. Now that he had entered the Chaos Abyss, he just needed to comprehend it to the extreme. It should be similar to the first Chaos Abyss. There should be similar cultivation grounds. Lin Feng stepped into the deep and endless Chaos Abyss. The Nine Hells' baleful chi lingered. The deeper he went, the thicker the Nine Hells' baleful chi. At the same time, the sense of time became stronger. The more Nine Hells' baleful chi one could withstand, the more the sense of time would increase. Lin Feng walked all the way to the bottom of the abyss. The Nine Hells' baleful chi was nearly 10 times denser than at the top of the abyss. In front of him was still a light barrier. Lin Feng could not help but smile. Behind the light barrier was the same token. The translucent water droplet was like a sacred tear. It contained strong willpower energy. Physical treasures were easy to find. Soul treasures were also not difficult to find. Only willpower treasures were extremely rare in the universe. After Lin Feng entered the Tai Chiong Supreme God Realm, his authority increased a lot. He learned many things that he did not know before, but he still had not seen a treasure that could increase willpower. Moreover, it was something that could increase his willpower by such a huge amount. His willpower far exceeded that of ordinary supremacies. If every Chaos Abyss has such a token, when I reach the 8th Chaos Abyss, I should be able to resist the shocking Nine Hells' baleful chi. Lin Feng was not confident before, but after seeing the same token again, he was 80% sure. The Nine Hells' baleful chi should be formed naturally by the Yellow Springs Road. The reason why the Yellow Springs established the Nine Hells Abyss was to choose a Godmaster who could become an Origin Chaos Supremacy. 9 Chaos Abyss, 9 conditions, naturally did not want to be too affected by the Nine Hells' baleful chi. That was why such a token appeared in the first place. Of course, willpower was also very important. I'll cultivate here. Unlike the first Chaos Abyss, the second Chaos Abyss was filled with time energy. The only difference was that the deeper one went, the clearer the time energy was. Since he could resist the Nine Hells' baleful chi, he would naturally cultivate at the bottom of the abyss. It was very similar to the 5th level of light and darkness. One was to comprehend the fusion of superior laws. The other was to comprehend the heavenly laws. With Lin Feng's current life level and the Black Vortex bloodline, his time talent was quite extraordinary. Comprehending the 9th level time heavenly path secret technique to perfection and becoming a time supremacy was easy. Even if he comprehended the 10th level time heavenly path secret technique to perfection, it was only a matter of time. Chapter 26:16. Take a guess. How long will it take for the newcomer to pass the second Chaos Abyss? The first one took 1 era. The second one will take at least 5 to 6 eras. Please, that's a level 10-time heaven path technique. How can one walk out without 10 eras? You guys are so bored. Instead of cultivating, you're wasting your time here. What's there to guess? Which of the first 3 Chaos Abyss couldn't pass? It's just a matter of time. The later ones are the real problem. That's right. That little fellow should be one of the best among the humans. The most outstanding thing about humans is their comprehension ability. It's not easy to comprehend laws. Discussions could be heard coming from the various chaos abyss. They had stayed in the same place for tens of thousands of years. Other than cultivating, they were on good terms. Although they were competitors, they were still far away from the 8th and ninth chaos abyss. Naturally, they weren't that anxious. After all, there was no time limit on the road to the underworld. There had been people who had stayed here for hundreds of thousands of years. No matter how outstanding one's talent was, how outstanding one's aptitude was, or how unique one's personality was, they would all be smoothed out with the passage of time. This was practically the burial ground of the most monstrous Godmaster geniuses in the universe. Godmaster cultivators who could pass the first 3 chaos abyss were less than 1 in a trillion. Comprehension of the myriad phenomena heaven path had to reach the level of level 10 time and space heaven path techniques. Time heaven path techniques had to be level 10. Space heaven path techniques had to be level 10. One had to know that to become a universe knight, a time knight, or a space knight, one only needed to reach level 9 in one of them. Level 10 was something that many knights couldn't reach. The most difficult thing was to reach all 3 levels of comprehension of the universe. If one of them wasn't good enough, one would lose all hope. Of course, those who could enter the road to the underworld weren't ordinary Godmaster geniuses. To them, even if one of them wasn't good enough, it was still above the passing line. They could slowly grind it out with time. The first 3 Chaos Abyss was indeed just an adaptation and a transition period. It was the same for Lin Feng. The second Abyss of Chaos was completed much faster than the first Abyss of Chaos. This was not because the secret technique of the heavenly way of time was easier to comprehend. Normally speaking, it would be much more difficult to comprehend than higher laws. However, Lin Feng had only spent a few hundred years in the first Abyss of Chaos. One era was spent on the fusion of light and darkness. As for the 10th order time heavenly path secret art, all one had to do was comprehend it. In less than half a century, Lin Feng surprised the group of divine master super geniuses who were watching the show. They took the token and entered the 3rd Chaos Abyss. The requirements for entering the 3rd Chaos Abyss were actually similar to the requirements for entering the 2nd Chaos Abyss. However, one was a secret technique of the heavenly Tao of time, while the other was a secret technique of the heavenly Tao of space. The baleful aura of the 9 hells in the 3rd Abyss of Chaos was slightly denser. However, Lin Feng, who had refined the token once again, was still able to easily comprehend the 10th stage space heavenly Tao secret technique at the bottom of the abyss and obtain the 3rd token. The 2 Chaos Abysses added together took less than an epoch. Lin Feng's speed had gained the recognition of the group of divine master super geniuses. It's all right. 3 Abyss of Chaos in 2 epochs. Not bad. Haha, back in the day, I passed through the first 3 Abyss of Chaos. In the eyes of the 15 divine master super geniuses, passing through the first 3 Abyss of Chaos was something that should be done. Spending 2 epochs could only be said to be barely enough. In the 4th Chaos Abyss. The newcomer is here. Us brothers won't be lonely anymore. A demon race expert and a Kinnear race expert couldn't help but laugh. Lin Feng stepped into the Chaos Abyss and greeted the two with a smile. Then, he walked toward the bottom of the Chaos Abyss. The demon race expert and the Kinnear race expert were stunned. This human is very cold. Yeah, he started cultivating the moment he entered. He must think that it's as easy as the first 3 Chaos Abyss. He'll know after staying here for a few epochs. The demon race expert and the Kinnear race expert looked at each other and smiled. They used to be like this too. They pressed forward courageously and only cared about cultivating. However, later on, they realized that it was too difficult to improve the basics, especially towards the end. The closer they got to that point, the harder it was. They had to spend 10 times or even 100 times more effort than before to reach that point. In their opinion, Lin Feng was full of spirit now. He had just passed through the first 3 Chaos Abyss smoothly. Naturally, he thought that the 4th Chaos Abyss was also very easy and could be passed in a short time. Some roads were rugged after walking through them. Some pain was only known after falling down. How can the perfect chaos body be so easy to temper? Yeah, you demon race are born with strong physiques, so it's easier. Our Kinea race's body is only slightly better than humans. The human body is indeed not good. The chaos body is very rare. To achieve the perfect chaos body, haha, it's too difficult. In my opinion, this human has to stay here for hundreds of epochs to have hope. That's good. Otherwise, I'll be lonely after you leave. Haha, I'm almost there. In a few more epochs, I should be able to meet the requirements. The demon race expert and the Kinea race expert were laughing happily. Suddenly, they were slightly stunned. They saw the human who had gone down the chaos abyss before rushing up again. His figure flashed, and he greeted them. However, this greeting was different from before. It was as if he was saying goodbye. In a daze, the human had already left and walked out of the chaos abyss. He's gone? Seems like it. Is that token in his hand? Could it be that he has completed it? No way. This human divine master has the perfect chaos body. How is that possible? The demon race expert and the Kinea race expert were confused. However, they saw Lin Feng leave the chaos abyss with their own eyes and saw the token in his hand. It was true. The two looked at the Yellow Springs Road. The familiar human figure on the endless road was already heading toward the fifth chaos abyss. Gulp. The two swallowed their saliva, their faces bitter and helpless. They thought they had a companion, but they didn't expect that he would only stay here for a short while and leave after taking the token. Their words just now were like self-mockery, and they were immediately slapped in the face. What kind of human is this? Yeah, how can a human have the perfect chaos body? He looks like a human. Alas, in the end, we're still brothers. The demon race expert and the Kinea race expert couldn't help but sigh. After a long epoch, they had worked hard to temper themselves, but now they were at the bottom of the list. At this moment, Lin Feng had already stepped into the fifth chaos abyss. The conditions here were very similar to the fourth chaos abyss, but many divine master super geniuses were trapped here. The perfect chaos soul. Chapter 26:17. Of the 15 divine master cultivators, 2 were in the fourth chaos abyss. 1 was in the 7th, 1 was in the 8th, and the remaining 11 were in the 5th and 6th chaos abyss. It wasn't that the 7th chaos abyss was easy, but that the 5th and 6th chaos abyss were too difficult. There was only one path to the Yellow Springs. If one couldn't pass the 5th and 6th chaos abyss, they naturally couldn't reach the 7th chaos abyss, let alone obtain the token to pass. There were 5 divine master cultivators in the 5th chaos abyss. Among them, the one who had stayed the longest had been there for almost 100,000 years. Even the one who had stayed the shortest had been there for more than 5,000 years. In order to pass the 5th chaos abyss, one had to transform into a perfect chaotic soul. This was extremely difficult for any divine master cultivator. It was easy to form a physical body, but difficult to form a soul. This was an unchanging law of the universe. There were far fewer divine masters who could become first thought supremacies than Vajra supremacies. Divine masters with perfect chaotic souls were also less than 1 in 10,000 divine masters with perfect chaotic bodies. Even Yuan Venerate Yun Min and Divine Venerate Yin Wu had perfect chaotic bodies when they were divine masters. However, they couldn't obtain perfect chaotic souls. Damn, this human has a perfect chaotic body. That's impossible. What's impossible? Didn't you see him pass the 4th chaos abyss in seconds? What a strange human. The divine master cultivators in the 5th chaos abyss were shocked. To their knowledge, it was extremely rare for a human to possess a chaotic body, let alone a perfect chaotic body. That was absolutely unheard of. However, the chaos abyss wouldn't lie. The human had indeed passed the 4th chaos abyss directly. Now he was walking toward them. The divine master cultivators exchanged glances. In the last era, they had still been evaluating the human cultivator's aptitude and speed in passing the chaos abyss. In the blink of an eye, he had already caught up with their progress. Too fast. I was caught off guard. Ha ha ha. The special life form, Goyu, laughed awkwardly. There are many human races, so there are bound to be some who stand out. Those with strong bodies usually have ordinary souls. You'll be trapped here for a long time. The demon race royal, Jiaoya, said coldly. What if his soul is also a perfect chaotic soul? At the bottom of the abyss, a white jade life form appeared, its two antennae hanging down. That's a human, not a special life form. Jiaoya, a member of the royal family of the demon race, had an arrogant look in his eyes. The special life form, Magatama, smiled bitterly. You make it sound like special life forms are abnormal. There are only a few monsters in the universe who are born with a perfect chaotic body and perfect chaotic soul. Most of them are just average. Whoosh! As he spoke, a human figure had already entered their eyes. Lin Feng arrived very quickly. Lin Feng smiled at the three of them and nodded. Then, he walked deeper into the forest. He naturally didn't come here to make friends. If it was possible, Lin Feng still hoped to complete all the tests within 10 eras, even though it sounded slightly inconceivable. But he wanted to do his best to try. The three of them focused their gazes until the nine hells' baleful chi covered Lin Feng's figure. Cool, said the special life form, Magatama. Pretentious human. Jiaoya, a member of the royal family of the demon race, had a look of disdain. The white jade life form looked at Lin Feng's back and didn't say anything. Among the three of them, his soul-sensing ability was the strongest. Magatama and Jiaoya couldn't sense it, but he could faintly feel that this human soul was very strong. It was stronger than his current self. He will be back soon, said the white jade life form indifferently. What did he mean? Magatama and Jiaoya didn't understand. The white jade life form didn't explain and sat aside. After a while, whoosh, Lin Feng's figure appeared from the bottom of the chaotic abyss. Magatama and Jiaoya widened their eyes because they saw the keepsake in Lin Feng's hand. They would be too stupid if they still didn't understand. Human genius. The white jade life form looked at Lin Feng's back and sighed softly. Magatama and Jiaoya were speechless. They were discussing happily before, but now their faces were green and white. They were very embarrassed. So what if he was human? He was a perfect chaotic soul. They had stayed here for almost 100,000 years and still couldn't make a breakthrough. He just walked around and left. He didn't even need to cultivate. They were both super geniuses. The difference was obvious. He is just talented. Jiaoya was a member of the demon clan's royal family. He always looked down on humans. This human is too awesome. Magatama's eyes were wide open. Jiaoya snorted coldly. He just entered the sixth chaotic abyss before us. He needs to improve his physical body control to 10 times that of a venerable. It is the limit of divine master. It is impossible to rely on talent alone. Frog in the well. The white jade life form stood up and said indifferently. Then he disappeared in the nine hells' baneful chi. The cold voice made Jiaoya's face turn red, but there was nothing he could do. For tens of thousands of eras, they had sparred with each other. In terms of strength, Jiaoya was far inferior to the white jade life form, even with Magatama. I will catch up with you, human. Jiaoya gritted his teeth and said to himself. On the Yellow Springs Road, Huang Yu and Huang Zhou were looking into the distance. That little guy is quite fast. Huang Yu squinted his eyes and laughed. He was not surprised that Lin Feng could reach the sixth chaotic abyss so quickly. He and Huang Zhou already knew about Lin Feng's strength. It is normal. Huang Zhou was expressionless. He was as cold as ever. Huang Yu stroked his white beard. Before that little guy came in, he absorbed a lot of energy from the Qin Emperor's origin pearl. His physical body control has reached the limit, and his soul control is close to the limit. He saved a lot of energy. It was a lucky hit, Huang Zhou said coldly. Huang Yu shook his head. You can't say that. Old Black, this little guy is cautious and bold. He is much smarter than Zhu Jiao and the little ape. He can't pass the eighth chaotic abyss either, Huang Zhou said mercilessly. Huang Yu stroked his beard and laughed. For tens of thousands of eras, no cultivator has ever passed the eighth chaotic abyss. It is normal if he can't pass. It is a waste of energy, Huang Zhou said. Looking into the distance, the nine hells' evil chi wrapped around the nine hells' abyss. Huang Yu put his hands behind his back and said calmly, "But this is our mission. Although Father has passed, his will and faith have never disappeared. In time, there will be a cultivator who can inherit Father's legacy and become an origin chaos venerable." Huang Zhou's expression was dark. He was angry and sad at times, but he soon recovered his indifference. "Even if we find him, it will still be a dead end." "Ha ha!" Huang Yu looked up and laughed. His laughter reverberated on the Yellow Springs Road. Chapter 26:18. The Sixth Chaos Abyss. His physical body control had reached 10 times that of a supremacy, the limit of the almighty level. Is this considered bitterness before sweetness? Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. He had inadvertently met the harsh conditions of the sixth abyss of chaos that he had learned from the Guardian of the Abyss. If he had just entered the Yellow Spring mystic realm, his physical body control would still be a long way from reaching 10 times. Now, even his soul control had almost reached 10 times perfection. The sixth abyss of chaos had the most cultivators. On one hand, there was a threshold from the fifth abyss of chaos to the sixth abyss of chaos. On the other hand, the requirements of the sixth and seventh abyss of chaos were relatively difficult to achieve. The eighth chaos abyss was different. The difficulty was indeed higher than the sixth and seventh chaos abyss combined, but it didn't take much time, because in the eighth chaos abyss, reaching it meant reaching it. If not, then one would be buried there forever. His physical body control was perfect 10 times. In the entire universe epoch, there were very few people who had achieved this since ancient times, let alone perfect control of the perfect chaotic body, which had reached 10 times the limit. Many supremacies had become Huang Zun, and their physical bodies had transformed into the perfect chaotic body, causing their physical body control to plummet. Fortunately, Lin Feng had attained the perfect chaotic body very early on. His physical body control had improved very well after that. However, the other cultivators didn't have it so easy. Most of them had never entered the Nine Hell Tribe and didn't know about the existence of the Yellow Spring Pool. Of course, most of them couldn't absorb the Yellow Spring Pool, which was the energy of the Qin Emperor's origin pearl. Without the energy of the Qin Emperor's origin pearl, it was too difficult to reach 10 times the control of the physical body. Even the talented Yuan venerate Yun Min, who was born with a perfect chaotic body, could only reach 9 times the control of the physical body. The further one went, the harder it was to reach the limit. From 9 times to 10 times, it was much more difficult than from 1 times to 9 times. The newcomer is here. I didn't expect him to be so fast. Just like Zhu Ho, he's another little monster. Above the sixth chaos abyss, the 3 almighty cultivators had mixed feelings when they saw Lin Feng arrive. Just an epoch ago, they had mocked Lin Feng for taking more than an epoch to break through the first chaos abyss. After that, when Lin Feng passed through the second and third abyss of chaos, they only slightly acknowledged that Lin Feng had reached the standard. But now he had nothing to say. Too fast. After Lin Feng cleared the first 3 chaos abyss, he cleared the 4th and 5th chaos abyss in seconds. What did this mean? He possessed both the perfect chaotic body and the perfect chaotic soul. It was quite terrifying. Throughout the entire history of the universe, such peerless super experts were extremely rare. But now they had seen one. Those who were able to stay here were all geniuses among geniuses. They were countless times stronger than the likes of Catfish King. Even so, he was still ashamed of his inferiority. They were very arrogant and disdained to be acquainted with ordinary people, but Lin Feng had already won them over. Geniuses were treasured. "Welcome." The Yunwu clan's expert walked over with a smile. He had a square head and big ears, and he looked a little chubby. However, that was just his body shape. A divine master cultivator couldn't possibly be chubby. "Hello, I'm a demonic butcher. They all call me the Great Demon." A tall and majestic demon clan expert greeted Lin Feng with a smile. He looked quite easy to get along with, but the eye-catching scar on his cheek betrayed him. Yun AI. The special life form Yun AI nodded with a smile. "Hello." Lin Feng was slightly surprised. When he entered the first few Chaos Abyss, he didn't receive such treatment. The divine master cultivators, they were neither cold nor warm. Some had ugly expressions, some were cold. In short, they weren't easy to get along with. However, the divine master cultivators here seemed to be quite amiable. "You're a human?" Yun AI asked curiously. Lin Feng nodded. "My name is Lin Feng. I'm from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Space 30,000 worlds." The great demon pointed at himself. God-murdering tower. The special life form Yun AI didn't seem to have any murderous aura, but she came from the God-murdering tower, which was famous for killing. Yun AI smiled. "I'm not from the 5 great factions." The great demon raised his eyebrows, and the scar on his cheek twitched. He grinned. "Don't listen to him. This kid has the biggest background among us. Do you know who his teacher is? A Yuan Venerate powerhouse." Lin Feng asked curiously. "An almighty, Yang Yu Palace Master. The special life form," Yun AI replied. Faint. Even though Lin Feng's mental fortitude was extremely good, he was still shocked. He hadn't expected the divine master cultivators here to have such a big background. They even had the disciple of an almighty. It seemed that the great demon and Yun AI's status in the space 30,000 worlds and God-murdering tower was definitely not low. Yun AI smiled. "The teacher can show you the way, but the cultivation depends on the individual. What's the use of having an almighty as a teacher?" First, there was Zhu Qi, then there was Lin Feng. "The people from the 7th Mercenary Alliance are better than us." Lin Feng couldn't help but ask curiously, "Isn't the Yellow Springs secret realm only accessible to cultivators from the 7th Mercenary Alliance?" The three of them exchanged glances and couldn't help but smile. "Lin Feng, you might not know much about this," Yin AI said with a smile. Yin Ming smiled and said, "This is related to an ancient battle that took place millions of years ago. I only learned about it from my teacher. I would like to hear the details." Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The disciple of an almighty in front of him obviously knew a lot of secrets about the Yellow Springs path. Yin AI was also a straightforward person and didn't hide anything. Eons ago, the universe's peerless genius Yellow Springs had a fierce battle with the 7th Mercenary Alliance's divine tribunal here. Back then, the godly venerate Yellow Springs killed 3 great eternity gods and dozens of eternity gods from the 7th Mercenary Alliance's divine tribunal, which infuriated them. Lin Feng's heart shook. It couldn't be right. A godly venerate had killed 3 great eternity gods and dozens of eternity gods? Weren't the great eternity gods of the 7th Mercenary Alliance's divine tribunal equivalent to peak Yuan venerates? Lin Feng asked. Yes. There was a look of admiration in Yun AI's eyes. Blessed by the will of the heavens, the position of the great eternity god was passed down by the 7th Mercenary Alliance's divine tribunal. Once one obtained it, they would be at the peak Yuan venerate level. However, they still couldn't defeat the godly venerate Yellow Springs back then. Invincible godly venerate. Lin Feng gasped. This was too terrifying. The higher one's strength, the harder it was to surpass one's level. It was simply unimaginable for a godly venerate to kill a peak Yuan venerate. Yun AI sighed. This is a true invincible godly venerate. He is more than 1,000 times stronger than the current invincible godly venerate. Lin Feng nodded. Godly venerate Yinwu was known as the invincible godly venerate, and the other 5 big shots also had invincible godly venerates. However, they had only defeated ordinary Yuan venerate powerhouses. Killing a peak Yuan venerate like Yellow Springs was truly terrifying. What happened after that? Lin Feng couldn't help but want to know. Chapter 26:19. After that, Yin Chuang's gaze was a bit blurred. Yellow Spring fell. His voice was filled with regret and respect for the strong. Yin Chuang sighed and looked at Lin Feng. Teacher only mentioned a few words to me and didn't go into detail. The Ape King might know more. Ape King. Lin Feng looked around curiously. The Ape King is in the 7th Chaos Abyss. Like me, he came from a space 30,000 worlds. The great demon laughed. His background isn't inferior to Yin Chuang's. When he was born, A vision appeared in the sky, and chaos descended. He was directly taken in as a disciple by Heavenly Emperor Ao Kong, and later became his disciple. Heavenly Emperor Ao Kong. Lin Feng was slightly startled. He's also a powerful existence? The great demon laughed. Yes, he's the same as your old ancestor Taichiung, the founder of the space 30,000 worlds. The powerful existence behind him. Lin Feng completely understood now. He didn't know about the Yellow Spring Road, but when he came, he was shocked. The powerful existences knew about two of them. One was the idle, powerful existence, Yang Yu Palace Master, and the other was the powerful existence, Heavenly Emperor Ao Kong of the space 30,000 worlds. Yin Shuang said softly, apart from the seventh universe's godly inquisition, the ones who know the most details are the powerful existences of the three magnates. Old Ancestor Taichiung, Heavenly Emperor Ao Kong, and Ancestor Qing. Ancestor Qing, Lin Feng muttered in his heart. This person was obviously the powerful existence who founded the murdering God Tower. Therefore, apart from the Seventh Mercenary Alliance, the cultivators who came here are the space 30,000 worlds and the murdering God Tower. Yin Chuang smiled. Of course, there are also those like us who came in through the back door. The great demon and Yun AI laughed. Lin Feng also laughed involuntarily. Indeed, it didn't seem like a big deal for a powerful existence to send his disciple here to train. We were sent here directly. The special life form Yun AI looked at Lin Feng. The Yellow Spring Secret Realm belongs to the Seventh Mercenary Alliance, but the Yellow Spring Road is a special inheritance ground under the control of the three magnates. Lin Feng understood. The doubts in his heart were solved a lot. This included the origins of the skeletons in the Ian God's burial ground, the identities of the divine master cultivators, and so on. It was just that what had happened tens of thousands of years ago and how Hierarch Netherworld had died was still a mystery. Such a super powerhouse could even kill Universe 7's Godly Inquisition's great eternity god. So who could kill him? Almighty. Could it be that old ancestor Tai Chiong, Celestial Emperor Ao Kong, and Ancestor Qing killed him? Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. The possibility was not small. However, if that was the case, why were the white-bearded old man and the black-bearded old man indifferent? As the descendants of the Yellow Springs, there was no reason for them not to know. It seems that a lot of things are involved. Lin Feng couldn't help but sigh in his heart. However, it was just as the black-bearded old man had said. Everything he wanted to know would be revealed once he entered the ninth abyss of chaos. Even if he knew more secrets, it wouldn't be of much use. The Nine Hells Abyss had to be explored. The primordial chaos venerable is really strong. Lin Feng sighed. Previously, in the Taichiung God realm, he thought that Hierarch Yenwu, an invincible hierarch, was extremely strong. He didn't expect there to be an even more terrifying existence. The primordial chaos venerable, the Yellow Springs. Just with the strength of a hierarch, he was almost invincible in the universe. I want to become the primordial chaos venerable. Lin Feng's conviction was even more profound. Even if this was an unusually bumpy path, if he could walk out of the Nine Hells Abyss and become the primordial chaos venerable, he would become a true powerhouse. He chatted with Yin Chuang, Great Demon, and Yun AI for a while. Although they had just met, there was no gap between them. Firstly, they had acknowledged each other, and secondly, they all had the same goal. Even the weakest among them, Yun AI, had never given up. Step by step, even if their wills were destroyed by the Nine Hells evil chi and they were buried in the Nine Hells abyss, they still wanted to become the unparalleled primordial chaos venerable. Thank you for your guidance. It's almost time for me to go. After chatting in detail, Lin Feng said goodbye to the three. Go and cultivate. Yin Chuang smiled and said, we still need to stay for a while. If we stay at the bottom of the chaos abyss, it's easy for the Nine Hells evil chi to affect our minds. Brother Lin, you must be careful. The more impatient you are, the stronger the Nine Hells evil chi's corrosion will be. Great Demon sighed and said, That's how old Monster Chu died. He was too impatient and ended up staying at the bottom of the abyss forever. No, I'm just going to get the token. Lin Feng smiled and then stepped into the chaos abyss, leaving the three dumbfounded. They looked at each other and stared at each other. Get the token? What did he mean? Brother Lin, your body control has reached 10 times? Yin Chuang was stunned. I've never heard of a cultivator passing through the 6 chaos abyss directly. The special life form Yin AI shook her head. She was doubtful and confused. She couldn't believe it. She had never heard of it. But Lin Feng said himself just now. Brother Lin, did you misunderstand the Chaos Guardian's words? Great Demon scratched his head. That's impossible. Brother Lin seems quite smart and wouldn't make such a mistake. Or is he too confident in himself? Maybe he's just going to take a look? Yin AI didn't know what she was saying. Yin Chuang kept silent. Lin Feng's meaning was obvious. If he wasn't bragging, then he really met the requirements of the 6 chaos abyss body control. Perfect 10 times. There's no need to guess. We will know soon. Yin Chuang said, if it was just to get the token, it wouldn't take much time. But if they were to cultivate in the abyss, it would take hundreds or thousands of years. The three of them were nervous and confused. They didn't dare to believe Lin Feng's words, but they were also looking forward to it. They knew about the existence of the Yellow Fountain Path. It was a super legacy path that no cultivator had reached the end of. Time passed slowly. As the three of them waited anxiously, a blurry figure appeared in the murky 9 held baleful energy. Lin Feng held the token and appeared with a smile. Everything seemed so natural and calm. See you again. Lin Feng said goodbye to the three of them and left the 6 chaos abyss. The three of them were shocked and couldn't calm down for a long time. It was true. There was really a cultivator who could pass the 6 chaos abyss in seconds and reach perfect 10 times body control before entering the Yellow Fountain Path. Moreover, he was just a human. It's true. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, it would be hard to believe. Yin AI shook her head. To think that there would be such a peerless genius among the humans. Amazing, simply too amazing. A look of admiration appeared in the eyes of the great devil. It was very rare for him to be convinced by others, but Lin Feng had convinced him. Yin Chuang's eyes flashed. Maybe one day he can really get the inheritance of Yellow Fountain and become a source chaos supremacy. Chapter 26:20. Lin Feng had entered the 7th chaos abyss. Under everyone's gaze, he stepped onto the Yellow Springs Road again. But this time, the Divine Master cultivators didn't look at him with ridicule and mockery, but with respect and envy. Another person had entered the 7th chaos abyss. The further he went, the more difficult each chaos abyss was. Only 2 Divine Master cultivators had entered the 7th chaos abyss. One was Ape King, who had stayed on the Yellow Springs Road the longest, and the other was the super genius of the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Zhu Qi Lin Feng was the third. And unlike the first 2, Lin Feng had passed through the 4th, 5th, and 6th Chaos Abyss in seconds. Including the first 3 Chaos Abyss, he had spent less than 2 eras. It was too exaggerated. In the 5th Abyss of Chaos, the face of Jiaoya, a royal member of the demon race, turned ashen. Previously, when Lin Feng had left, he had vowed that he would surpass Lin Feng and win back the face of the demon race. But now, Lin Feng had already left and didn't stop at the 6th Chaos Abyss. And he was still in the 5th Chaos Abyss. The difference was more than 10,000 miles. You can't catch up. You can't compare to him at all. Bayu's life feelers drooped and trembled slightly. Even though he had seen countless super geniuses, he had never seen someone as monstrous as Lin Feng. Relax. Don't let jealousy get to your head. Go Yu patted Jiaoya's shoulder. The 9 Hells Chi won't joke with you. Just be yourself. Not just you. None of US can compare to this human, including Zhu Qi, who is now in the 8th Chaos Abyss. In the 8th Chaos Abyss, endless baleful aura covered the area. A slender figure with a crazed expression appeared. His hair that reached his waist was like a green snake. He arched his body and madly bit his surroundings. endless, baleful aura of the nine hells shrouded him like a hurricane. The nine hells chi of the first 7 chaos abyss combined was less than 1% of the 8th chaos abyss. This was the source of the nine hells chi. No one could stop me. I, Ju Chi, am destined to become the one and only source chaos supremacy in the universe. Dominate the universe. Ju Chi's eyes were filled with ambition. Compared to the previous 7 abyss of chaos, he was like a completely different person now. His blood-red eyes were filled with hatred as he resisted the nine hells' baleful chi. Like a Shura possessing his body, Ju Chi stepped into the depths of the yellow springs, into the bottomless abyss. He had no way out. He had never thought of retreating. To enter the yellow springs, there were only 2 possibilities. Either he died, or he had to break through the nine hells abyss. One just left, and here comes another. Lin Feng hadn't even entered the 7th abyss of chaos when hearty laughter sounded out from within the baleful chi of the nine hells, and it was unrestrained like an idle cloud. Lin Feng knew which divine master cultivator's laughter came from. It was a most senior cultivator on the Yellow Springs path. The Ape King, the gifted ancient Earth Ape. He was taken in as an inner disciple by Heavenly Emperor Alcone when he was born, and then became a disciple and was carefully nurtured. According to Yun Ming, the Ape King was the one who knew the most about the Yellow Springs path among all the divine masters. 7th Mercenary Alliance, Lin Feng. Lin Feng stepped into the abyss of chaos and introduced himself first. At first glance, he knew that the ancient Earth Ape in front of him had a good temper and was definitely a forthright person. Come. The Ape King's white fur threw a pot of wine over and laughed. They all call me the Ape King. Thanks, Ape King. Lin Feng reached out and received it. He clinked it with the Ape King's and drank to his heart's content. Some cultivators seemed to have known each other for a long time, even though they had just met. In 100,000 eras, you're the 3rd cultivator I've met. The Ape King looked into the distance and sighed. The 3rd? Lin Feng instantly understood and said softly, Did the first one die here? No, it was also in the 8th abyss of chaos. The Ape King picked up the wine pot again and clinked it with Lin Feng. Because of him, I haven't entered the 8th abyss of chaos. Lin Feng looked at the Ape King. Let's not talk about this. Drink. The Ape King looked at Lin Feng with a fiery gaze. He was obviously very happy. You're much friendlier than Ju Chi. That guy immediately went in to cultivate. Lin Feng laughed. It's fine. There's no hurry. The Ape King looked at Lin Feng and said meaningfully, You really don't have to be too anxious. Lin Feng smiled. The mysterious Ape King in front of him had seen through him. The 7th abyss of chaos was almost the same as the 6th abyss of chaos. One required perfect control of the body by 10 times, while the other required perfect control of the soul by 10 times. His control of the soul was currently close to 9. 9 times. Originally, this was the weakest link. However, after the Yellow Spring Pool and the big Yellow Spring Pool's energy accumulated, it was almost perfect. Although 10 times require a lot of time, it was still within an acceptable range. They chatted happily. Lin Feng did not ask the Ape King about the Yellow Spring secret realm. If the Ape King wanted to talk about it, he would naturally tell him. If he did not want to talk about it, there was no need to ask. After all the mysteries would be revealed in the 9th abyss of chaos. If it could not be revealed, he would definitely die in the 8th abyss of chaos. There was no difference whether he knew or not. Instead, it was the Ape King's story that made Lin Feng very curious. He was a disciple of a legendary almighty, celestial Emperor Ao Kong of 30,000 worlds. Naturally, there were differences between almighties. The founders of the 5 giants were undoubtedly the strongest among the almighties. As for the Ape King, he was taken in as a disciple by celestial Emperor Ao Kong when he was born and later became his disciple. This treatment was much better than that of another almighty's disciple, Yin Chuan. A talent that was chosen by a legendary almighty early on was definitely the best talent in the entire universe. Moreover, it was personally nurtured by the almighty. It would definitely be a bright path with the best resources for cultivation. His path would definitely not be crooked. Such an expert's cultivation speed was slower than Zhu Qi's. Lin Feng did not believe it. Actually, Ape King, you can already get the keepsake, right? Lin Feng asked the biggest question in his heart. The Ape King laughed as if he was not surprised by Lin Feng's question. What difference does it make whether I get it or not? Anyway, I will still enter the 8th abyss of chaos in the future. I will definitely die. Forgive me for being presumptuous. Ape King, you. Lin Feng hesitated for a moment. The Ape King shook his head lightly. I'm not someone who is afraid of death. However, the death of my close friend made me understand that to enter the 8th abyss of chaos, I must be fully prepared. There is truly no turning back. Now, I'm still less than 60% confident. 60%? Lin Feng was shocked. That was already very high. However, it seemed that the Ape King was still not satisfied. Then, Zhu Qi, Lin Feng asked. The Ape King smiled and said indifferently, he will definitely die. Chapter 26-21. The 7th Chaos Abyss was a new challenge for Lin Feng. It seemed easy to go from 9 times to 10 times, but the difficulty increased from 1 times to 9 times. The further he went, the closer he was to the limit, and the harder it was to improve. Previously, Lin Feng's control of his body reached 10 times. But this time, the control of his soul was different. Lin Feng's control of his soul wasn't strong. He relied more on the yellow spring pool and the big yellow spring pool to improve. But this didn't mean that Lin Feng's control of his soul was weak. He just didn't spend time and effort on it. With a vast and boundless sea of consciousness, a pure and perfect soul, and top-notch willpower, how could Lin Feng's control of his soul be weak? In fact, his talent was higher than his control of his body. His cultivation in the 7th Chaos Abyss improved by leaps and bounds. Even Lin Feng himself was surprised by the speed. He only spent 1 era to improve to 95 times. Then, his speed gradually slowed down. But that wasn't what Lin Feng was concerned about. 9 Hell's baneful aura. Lin Feng knew clearly how strong the 9 Hell's baneful aura in the 7th Chaos Abyss was. It was 10 times stronger than the 6th Chaos Abyss, but it paled in comparison to the 8th Chaos Abyss. With my current willpower, it shouldn't be a problem to enter the 8th Chaos Abyss, but it's still unknown how far I can go. According to the Ape King, there's no retreat there. It's a real dead end. There's no chance of survival. Lin Feng learned a lot of information about the 8th Chaos Abyss from the Ape King. The Ape King might have deduced it himself, or he might have learned it from his close friend, or it might have been his teacher, Almighty Heavenly Emperor Ao Kong. Zhu wouldn't know. Because he was a loner, he was like a stranger to the Ape King. But Lin Feng already knew. The black-bearded elder from the 9 Purgatory clan also said that the most dangerous parts of the 9 Purgatory Abyss are the 8th and 9th Chaos Abyss. Lin Feng now understood that the so-called danger referred to the fact that there was no way out. The danger from the 1st to the 7th Chaos Abyss came from the 9 Hell's baneful aura. If one was in a hurry to succeed during cultivation, it was easy to be corroded by the 9 Hell's baneful aura, and one's willpower would collapse. However, the 8th Abyss of Chaos was different. There was no need to cultivate there. He only needed to walk step by step to the bottom of the endless abyss. The Ape King didn't say how he would succeed, but the Guardian of the Abyss would tell him when he entered the 8th Abyss of Chaos. What was known at the moment was that it required extremely strong willpower. This was because the 8th Abyss of Chaos was the source of the 9 Hell's baleful qi. From now on, I will train my soul control while training my willpower. Lin Feng had carefully observed the Ape King's cultivation. His cultivation method was very simple. It was to transform. 1 turned into 100 and simultaneously resisted the 9 Hell's baleful qi. Even if there were tens of thousands of incarnations, the willpower itself would not change. However, the amount of 9 Hell's baneful aura they came in contact with would increase. Splitting 1 into 100 was equivalent to resisting 100 times the 9 Hell's baleful qi. Lin Feng also had the ability to transform, which originated from his teacher, the True Dragon Monarch's True Dragon Avatar. However, back then, the True Dragon Monarch could only split 1 into 9 and have 9 True Dragon Avatars. Now, Lin Feng had a vast sea of consciousness and a purer and more perfect soul. He could have hundreds of True Dragon Avatars at most. If I don't deliberately control my soul and just resist the 9 hells' baleful chi, I should be able to have 700 to 800 True Dragon Avatars when my soul control is cultivated to perfection. The strength of the avatars was related to the various avatar mystic techniques. However, the number of avatars was directly related to the soul's essence and the vastness of the sea of consciousness. Lin Feng's sea of consciousness had already fused with the 10,000 origin mustard stone. Naturally, it could withstand more avatars. Lin Feng's soul was stronger than the Ape King's. Human souls were never weak. Actually, if I split my main body into 100 and cultivate soul control at the same time, the effect would be better. Lin Feng didn't mind at first, but later on, he suddenly had an idea. When he cultivated with hundreds of True Dragon Avatars at the same time, his cultivation speed skyrocketed. Controlling hundreds of True Dragon Avatars was already the limit of soul control. Then, he controlled hundreds of True Dragon Avatars to cultivate in the Chaos Abyss. Firstly, he could resist the 9 hells' baleful chi. Secondly, he could improve his soul control. Using both methods simultaneously, his cultivation speed soared. This works. The Ape King's eyes widened when he saw Lin Feng's cultivation method. I'm so stupid. Why didn't I think of this before? The Ape King's face was bitter and helpless. Although he already had a perfect chaotic body and perfect chaotic soul, there were differences in strength between perfect chaotic bodies and perfect chaotic souls. His perfect chaotic body was much stronger than the perfect chaotic soul. Therefore, although the Ape King didn't spend 100,000 eras like Huang Yu and Huang Zhou said in the 7th Chaos Abyss, he still spent 50,000 eras to improve his soul control to 10 times perfection. If I had used this method earlier, 20,000 eras, no, 10,000 eras would have been enough. The Ape King sighed. The waste of 40,000 eras was heart-wrenching. If he were to cultivate outside, it wouldn't be a big deal if it was a waste. However, this was the 9 hells abyss. One more era meant one more era of resistance. Absorbing the 9 hells' baleful chi was a hidden danger and a bomb buried in the body. Many divine master cultivators couldn't live more than 100,000 eras in the 9 hells abyss. Although he was talented, the Ape King gradually found it hard to bear. Especially in the last few hundred eras, he was already under pressure. After all, when he was training his will in the 7th Chaos Abyss, his body absorbed many times more 9 hells' baleful chi than normal. This little guy is quite powerful. The Ape King sighed. Previously, he only watched Lin Feng go through the 6th Chaos Abyss one by one. He didn't really come into contact with him. Now, he knew that the human Lin Feng in front of him was not only powerful, but also had terrifying potential. He is much stronger than Zhu Qi, the Ape King's side. After mastering the new soul control method, Lin Feng's efficiency increased. In the 3rd era, his soul control increased to 99 times. It was the 5th era. Whoosh! The vast sea of consciousness shook violently like a tsunami. It was filled with joy. The bright and perfect soul in the center of the sea of consciousness, wrapped in the aura of chaos, was also trembling slightly. In the void, the firmament rumbled and thunder rumbled. Even in the Yellow Spring secret realm and the 9 hells abyss, they couldn't resist the descent of the heavenly axiom. The universe's chaotic energy covered Lin Feng. He felt that his body and mind were improving. He was completely relaxed, enjoying the universe's most essential gift. Soul control, perfect 10 times. That was the end of a divine master cultivator. It was also the most perfect starting point for a venerable. His life's level suddenly increased. It was exactly the same as the increase of his physical body control to 10 times. The huge improvement sublimated every cell in his body, including his chaos power, soul power, and willpower. Finally, it's done. Lin Feng opened his eyes and revealed a satisfied smile. Chapter 26-22. Currently, Lin Feng's life level was quite high. His life level was far beyond that of a normal peak almighty. With Lin Feng's ability, he could easily break through the shackles and become a supremacy, be it a chaotic supremacy or a perfect primordial chaos supremacy. In fact, all 15 almighty cultivators had the ability to do so. However, the road to the underworld had sealed off all escape routes. The road to the underworld was very special, as it almost concealed the universe's heavenly axiom. Even if one wanted to become a supremacy, they had to leave this place. However, there was only one way to leave this place, and that was through the road to the underworld. 1 into 1,000? The Ape King widened his eyes in shock. He could only create 100 doppelgangers with all his might, but Lin Feng could create 1,000 doppelgangers. The difference was 10 times. Lin Feng did not expect it either. He originally thought that creating 800 doppelgangers was the limit. However, after his soul control reached 10 times perfection, including the leap in life level, the strengthening of his sea of consciousness and soul essence, the number of doppelgangers exceeded 1,000. Of course, this did not mean that Lin Feng could precisely control 1,000 doppelgangers. Even Ultimate God could not do that. However, it was not a problem to simply resist the Nine Hells demonic aura, as it did not require any control. It's only been 5 eras. The Ape King was speechless. Comparisons were odious. It took him 50,000 eras to reach the required soul control level, but Lin Feng only took 5 eras. Although his soul talent was slightly weaker, it was not that far off. This little monster. Teacher said that I'm a rare super genius in the universe. Then Lin Feng is probably one in a million eras. The Ape King shook his head in admiration. With his intelligence, he would not be jealous or envious of Lin Feng. Everyone had their own path to walk. Being slow did not mean it was bad. 60%, the Ape King murmured. Endless Nine Hell's demonic aura shrouded each of his doppelgangers. They were still some distance away from the bottom of the 7th abyss. The Ape King's plan was to enter the bottom of the 7th abyss and enter the 8th chaos abyss. By then, he would have a 70% chance of success. But now, looking at Lin Feng, who was like the sun in the sky and a peerless saber that had been unsheathed, the Ape King's heart wavered. Even though his mind was very firm, his thoughts had changed. Or perhaps, the environment had changed. When a junior who was more outstanding than you appeared and cultivated with you, it was inevitable that you would want to compete with him. After all, the Ape King was also a proud person. He didn't want to compete with Ju Qi because the Ape King knew that he was much stronger than Ju Qi. But Lin Feng, the Ape King admitted that he was stronger than Lin Feng now. But what about 5 years later, 50 years later, or 50,000 years later? It was only a matter of time before Lin Feng caught up with him. Especially Lin Feng, who could split into thousands of clones. The effect of tempering himself in the abyss of primal chaos far exceeded his by more than 10 times. Actually, 60% is enough. The Ape King had never been a coward who was afraid of death. He only hoped that he could challenge the 8th abyss of chaos with greater confidence. But now his heart was wavering. If an expert's heart wavered, the effect of his cultivation would be greatly reduced. Instead of hesitating, it was better to take action directly. I have already cultivated for 180,000 eras. In addition, I have been absorbing the Nine Hells' baleful aura crazily for the past 50,000 years. No matter how strong my physical body is, it has been tempered to the extreme. If I continue, the benefits might not outweigh the disadvantages. It is very likely that overtraining will damage my physical body and leave behind future troubles. If that is the case, then let's do it. The Ape King closed his eyes and felt a little complicated. He knew that the reason he made this decision was more or less because of Lin Feng. However, the reason why he didn't want to challenge the 8th abyss of chaos was actually because the death of his first close friend had left an indelible mark in his heart. Rather than saying that Lin Feng had influenced him, It was more accurate to say that Lin Feng had given him a push. Perhaps I should thank him. The Ape King grinned and laughed. His laughter reverberated in the entire abyss of chaos. His 100 clones instantly gathered in the middle. Streaks of chaotic air wrapped around them and turned into the image of the great Earth Ancient Ape. Roar! The violent roar was like thunder that descended from the sky and dispersed all the Nine Hells' baneful aura. The Ape King revealed his true form. He was extremely tall and mighty. An illusory figure that was surrounded by chaotic air currents appeared in the void. He was like the king of the earth. His red eyes were filled with battle intent, and he supported the world alone. He was the great Earth Ancient Ape King. At this moment, the Ape King was domineering. It was as if he had broken free from his shackles and was fearless. I'll take my leave first. Lin Feng, let's meet in the 8th abyss of chaos. Ha ha! There was endless relief in his laughter. Lin Feng stood in the abyss of chaos with bright eyes. Although he didn't know why the Ape King suddenly thought it through, this was undoubtedly a good thing. In his opinion, having close to a 60% chance of success was already enough. The Ape King was more worried because of the knot in his heart. I hope he can succeed. Lin Feng naturally didn't want the candid Ape King to die in the 8th abyss of chaos. However, this wasn't up to him. There was only one thing he could do, and that was to cultivate, and cultivate. There are still 3 eras left. Lin Feng's goal hadn't changed. He hoped to break out of the Nine Hells abyss within 10 eras. If possible, Lin Feng hoped to save the Milky Way super black hole by himself, instead of relying on his teacher's help. No matter how my willpower sharpened, I'll go to the 8th abyss of chaos in 2 eras. Lin Feng had already made up his mind. On the Yellow Springs path, Huang Yu and Huang Zhou looked at the Nine Hells' baleful qi in shock. The great Earth Ancient Ape was running. The chaotic aura lingered around the Nine Hells' baleful qi. Even the Nine Hells' baleful qi couldn't conceal the great Earth Ancient Ape's figure. So fast, Huang Yu was surprised. Huang Zhou was also shocked. Although he thought highly of the Ape King, even more so than Zhu Qi, he knew that the Ape King's soul was his weakness. It would take a long time for him to pass through the 7th abyss of chaos. He didn't expect the Ape King to break through in just a few eras. Oh, Huang Yu stroked his white beard, narrowed his eyes, and smiled. I understand. Huang Zhou stared at the great Earth Ancient Ape's figure in the void. After a long time, he said, "He's more patient than we thought." Huang Yu chuckled. Who said the great Earth Ancient Ape was brave, but not smart? This little great Earth Ancient Ape is smart. He's been patiently sharpening his willpower. It's impressive that he could endure until now. Huang Zhou nodded. He came out of seclusion. It means that he has absolute confidence. Huang Yu narrowed his eyes and smiled. That's not necessarily true. The 8th abyss of chaos isn't just what they see with their naked eyes. Yeah. Huang Zhou sighed with emotion. His face turned cold. They won't know the source of the Nine Hells' baleful qi. Chapter 26-23. The 8th abyss was a place of no return. Once one entered, they would be trapped there forever unless they obtained the token and left. The Nine Hells' baleful aura there was extremely dense and crazy. Even if one stood still, the Nine Hells' baleful aura would be much scarier than the 7th abyss. Therefore, once one entered the 8th abyss, they would have to risk their lives to reach the bottom and die without regrets. Either they successfully obtained the token, or they would be buried in the abyss forever. After Zhu Jiao, the Ape King also entered this abyss of chaos where death was certain. It was indeed a certain death, not a 9 out of 10 chance. That was because for tens of thousands of eras, all the divine master cultivators who entered the 8th abyss had died without exception. Not a single person came out of the 8th abyss of chaos with the token and entered the 9th abyss of chaos. Would the Ape King be the first? Huang Yu and Huang Zhou didn't know. Lin Feng didn't know either. The only thing he could do was to seize every minute to cultivate. The 1,000 doppelgangers stepped into the bottom of the 7th abyss step by step. Lin Feng was enduring 1,000 times more Nine Hells' evil qi 10 times more than what the Ape King had to endure. However, in just half an era, Lin Feng had already reached the Ape King's original position. He was much faster than the Ape King had expected. Moreover, Lin Feng had arrived with the tolerance of his 1,000 doppelgangers. In other words, Lin Feng could endure 10 times more than the Ape King. Although this didn't mean that Lin Feng's willpower was 10 times stronger than the Ape King's, it was obvious that his willpower had surpassed the Ape King's. Because the starting point of Lin Feng's willpower was much higher than the Ape King's. The improvement of his cultivation was naturally greater than the Ape King's. Whether it was the body, soul, or willpower, it was the same. When one first started cultivating, the improvement speed would definitely be very fast. That was because one's potential was there, and the cultivation method was very important. Lin Feng had actually just entered the Nine Hells Abyss not long ago. His body's absorption of various aspects was almost zero. Therefore, his tolerance and resistance were better than the Ape King's. Coupled with the increase of 1,000 doppelgangers, the effect was self-evident. There's still 1.5 eras left. Lin Feng didn't intend to challenge the 8th Abyss of Chaos now, even though he had a 60% chance of succeeding, which was even higher than the Ape King. It wasn't because he was afraid of death, nor was it because he wanted to be more confident. It was because Lin Feng felt that his willpower was like a blooming flower, but it was far from fully blooming. The room for improvement was still huge. Besides, Lin Feng also wanted to know if he could reach the bottom of the 7th Abyss with just 1,000 clones. One step. Lin Feng's progress was very steady. Every 1,000 years, he would get closer to the bottom of the 7th Abyss of Chaos. His willpower would rise steadily. Although the efficiency would start to decrease, it still wouldn't dry up. After an era, Lin Feng finally reached the bottom of the 7th Abyss. The surging Nine Hells fiendish qi seemed to want to devour his body completely. Lin Feng controlled his soul. His will had been tempered to the greatest extent and had long since become extremely tough. There's still half an epoch. Lin Feng was still not satisfied, because the current him could only stand firmly at the bottom of the 7th Abyss of Chaos. He hadn't reached the casual stage. His gaze passed through the Nine Hells fiendish qi and looked at the wall. There, the keepsake of the 7th Abyss of Chaos could be seen clearly. If I refine it in the end, I'll have more confidence in challenging the 8th Abyss of Chaos. Lin Feng was still inexplicably worried. His intuition told him that the 8th Abyss of Chaos wasn't that simple. For tens of thousands of eras, how many super geniuses of the universe had fallen there? None of them had ever succeeded. Among them, there were definitely some who weren't weaker than the Ape King, but they still failed. If the Ape King and he could find a way to discover the secret of the 8th Abyss of Chaos, why couldn't they? Which one of those who could enter here were ordinary? It's definitely not that simple. Lin Feng believed in his own judgment, so he persisted in tempering his willpower to the extreme. He did his best because this was the only thing he could do now. As for what the 8th Abyss of Chaos was like, he could only deal with it as he entered. Yellow Springs Road. Failed. As expected, Huang Yu and Huang Zhou. One was regretful, while the other was expressionless. Willpower was a very ethereal thing. It didn't have any attacking power, but it was closely related to the body, soul, cultivation, and other aspects. Therefore, Huang Yu and Huang Zhou couldn't see how strong the Ape King's willpower was. They could only estimate based on experience that the Ape King's willpower was stronger than Zhu Qi's. But this didn't mean that the Ape King could pass the 8th Abyss of Chaos. The group of practitioners might not know what was in the 8th Abyss of Chaos, but Huang Yu and Huang Zhou were ordered by the Yellow Springs to guard the Yellow Springs Road. Based on the selection set by the Yellow Springs, the 8th Abyss of Chaos was actually the last Abyss of Chaos. Although the 9th Abyss of Chaos was the final step to becoming a primal chaos venerable, every practitioner had their own destiny. It wasn't within the range of the Yellow Springs control. To become a primal chaos venerable, the right time, the right place, and the right people were all indispensable. It's a pity for the little ape. He almost reached the source. It's not a pity. With his willpower, even if he reached the source and obtained the keepsake, he wouldn't be able to complete the last step. The last step is 10 times or even 100 times harder than reaching the source of the nine-hell baleful aura. In the last 10,000 eras, only 2 practitioners obtained the keepsake, but they both fell in the end. How could it be so easy to become a top talent like the Yellow Springs Venerable? Otherwise, the Yellow Springs Venerable wouldn't be the only primal chaos venerable since the creation of the universe. The little ape should have been able to obtain the keepsake as well, but the nine-hell baleful aura shackles in his body are too heavy. Overtraining isn't necessarily a good thing. The nine-hell baleful aura itself is a double-edged sword. How could it be so easy to control? It comes from a power that not even the Yellow Springs Venerable can fully control. Huang Yu and Huang Zhou spoke calmly. The fall of the Ape King didn't cause any ripples in their hearts. For tens of thousands of eras, they had seen divine master cultivators who were more talented than the Ape King. When those super geniuses fell one after another, and none of them managed to pass through the 8th abyss of chaos, Huang Yu and Huang Zhou had already become indifferent to it. It wasn't that those super geniuses were weak, but that the Yellow Springs Venerable's requirements were too high. The Ape King wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. Oh, while speaking, Huang Yu's eyes couldn't help but light up in surprise. Lin Feng passed the 7th abyss of chaos? Impossible. Huang Zhou's expression changed slightly. He hasn't even entered the 7th era. Huang Yu and Huang Zhou looked at each other in disbelief. In the last 10,000 eras, they had never seen a practitioner pass through all 7 abyss of chaos in such a short time. The fastest one had taken 121 eras. However, Lin Feng had only used less than 9 eras to achieve this. Chapter 26-24. The 8th chaos abyss was filled with boundless nine hell's baleful aura, shrouding this mysterious and terrifying hell. Countless top geniuses of the universe were buried in this desolate chaos abyss. Lin Feng had already seen it 9 years ago when he stepped into the Yellow Springs Road. At that time, he felt that his willpower couldn't survive in this nine hell's baleful aura. But now, he was able to stay calm. You can leave after you get the token and refine it. Lin Feng thought about the Chaos Guardian's words. It was much shorter than the previous 7 Chaos Guardians, but it had a deeper meaning. The previous Chaos Guardians had never mentioned refining the token. So, the token this time is especially important. Lin Feng didn't think too much about it. Anyway, he had refined the token directly in the previous 7 Chaos Abyss. It was no different now. I wonder how the Ape King is doing. Will I meet him in the 8th Chaos Abyss? Lin Feng didn't know that the Ape King had died. On the path to the Yellow Springs Road, to become an origin chaos supremacy, many super geniuses of the universe died here. They all had an ultimate goal, which was to become the one and only origin chaos supremacy in the universe. The Ape King was no exception. However, this path was too bumpy and rugged. Okay, Lin Feng entered the 8th Chaos Abyss alone. It was different from the previous 7 Chaos Abyss. The moment he entered, dark clouds covered the sky. It was as if he had entered an independent world. The entrance at the top was completely sealed. One could enter, but not leave. Lin Feng already knew this from the Ape King. In the previous 7 Chaos Abyss, when one was tired and couldn't take it anymore, they could still go to the top of the Chaos Abyss to rest. But after entering the 8th Chaos Abyss, they would be in a state of battle until their lives died. As soon as he entered, the Nine Hells' baleful aura was comparable to the densest area at the bottom of the 7th Chaos Abyss. However, this was a piece of cake for Lin Feng, who could withstand 1,000 doppelgangers. Swoosh! Lin Feng shot out like an arrow, heading straight for the abyss of primal chaos. There was no need to stop. Lin Feng had just finished cultivating at the bottom of the 7th abyss of chaos. This was completely within his acceptable range. Even if he absorbed more Nine Hells' baleful aura at the same time because of his rapid speed, it was still within his calculations. Since Lin Feng dared to do this, he naturally had absolute confidence. As he went deeper and deeper, the the nine hells' baleful chi became denser and denser. Only then did Lin Feng slow down. However, he only slowed down and didn't stop because this was far from his limit. What was the real limit? Just like when the Ape King had approached the source of the nine hells' killing chi, every step forward would take him years or even decades to expel the corrosion of the nine hells' killing chi. It would take him an era or even more to cover a distance of 1,000 meters. Every step was a struggle, an evolution. If one was able to withstand it successfully, one's will would rise accordingly. However, if one were to fail, one would die. In fact, the Ape King had already seen the source of the nine hells' killing chi. If he could persist for a few dozen more eras, he might be able to obtain the token. However, just as Huang Zhou said, the Ape King had cultivated in the nine hells abyss for too long. The shackles of the nine hells killing chi in his body were too deep. Every time he resisted, his body would react. It was like being attacked from both inside and outside. The exhaustion on the Ape King was several times greater. Therefore, Zhu Qi was still resisting stubbornly and advancing with difficulty. However, the Ape King had already fallen into the endless abyss of the Yellow Springs before him. Cultivating the nine hells killing chi was a double-edged sword. While increasing one's resistance, it would also cause great damage to one's body. Therefore, Lin Feng's choice was very correct. When the increase in his will reached a plateau, he decisively withdrew and advanced into the eighth abyss of chaos. Everything couldn't be done when one was 100% confident. Pursuing perfection too much would result in imperfection. Lin Feng's speed was very fast. Not long after entering the eighth abyss of chaos, he had already exceeded 50%. The depth of each abyss of chaos was about the same. Therefore, it was very easy to estimate. Compared to the previous 7 abyss of chaos, Lin Feng had already slowed down. The nine hells killing chi was even denser. Lin Feng's speed also became slower and more cautious. According to the Ape King, at the 50% position, the nine hells killing chi's density should be 10% to 20% of the bottom. Lin Feng secretly estimated. If that was the case, he was completely capable of resisting. Even if he reached the bottom, it would only be slightly strenuous. That's true. Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. When he was at the bottom of the 7th abyss of chaos, he could easily resist the nine hells killing chi by splitting into 1,000. That day, the Ape King split into 100, and it was already difficult for him to reach the bottom of the abyss of chaos. Even so, the Ape King had a 60% chance of passing the 8th abyss of chaos. I hope he can fulfill his wish. Lin Feng was looking forward to meeting the Ape King again. According to the Ape King's estimation of the difficulty of the 8th abyss of chaos, he was absolutely confident that he could pass it. However, one couldn't make a conclusion easily. The Ape King's estimation might not be completely correct. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, Lin Feng gradually descended to the 3/4 of the abyss of chaos. At this moment, he was already cautiously walking quickly. Lin Feng's expression was normal. It was as if he still had energy left and hadn't used all of his strength. Reaching the bottom of the abyss of chaos might not be smooth sailing. It was very likely that there would be a greater test waiting for him. Therefore, he had to preserve his strength as much as possible. For tens of thousands of eras, there has never been a divine master cultivator who passed the 8th abyss of chaos. Lin Feng was confident but not conceited. If it was really as the Ape King said, he believed that for tens of thousands of eras, there would definitely be a peerless genius who would break through the cage. However, there wasn't. The data was the most direct. The judgment would be biased because there wasn't enough information. However, the data wouldn't lie. While he was pondering, Lin Feng suddenly felt a strange energy aura. His gaze fell to the ground not far away, and he could faintly see a slender figure, faintly discernible. It's not the Ape King. Lin Feng determined at a glance. He should be Zhu Jiao, who entered the nine hell abyss 12700 years ago. He was the champion of a universe battle 12,700 years ago. He was a peerless genius of the 7th Mercenary Alliance and a super divine master cultivator who entered the burial ground of the Ian god before him. He's already at his limit. Lin Feng didn't need to feel. He could already see Zhu Jiao's current situation as he slowly approached. His waist-length hair was like poisonous snakes biting the surroundings. His eyes were blood-red and ruthless. He was already using all of his strength to resist the 9 hell baleful qi. However, this was only 3/4 of the 8th abyss of chaos. There was still 1/4 of the way left. It was harder than ascending to the heavens. What a pity! Lin Feng felt pity for Zhu Jiao. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. How long he could last depended on how much faith he had left. With such a long distance, he was probably close to despair. He couldn't help him, nor could he. Suddenly, the abyss of chaos shook. Lin Feng frowned slightly. Chapter 26-25. Die! Go to hell! His 10 fingers were like swords, turning into an invincible sword aura that shot straight at Lin Feng. Zhu Qi, who was enveloped by endless 9 hell's baleful aura, looked like a monster possessed by an evil spirit. Swoosh! Chilling bone flashed, but Lin Feng was expressionless. Although it happened suddenly, he didn't panic. Years of fighting made Lin Feng's heart as calm as still water. He maintained absolute vigilance at all times, including now. Aurora sky screen. Lin Feng instantly defended. Although he was in the 9 hell's baleful aura, he could still maintain absolute clarity of mind while fighting. Firstly, because Lin Feng's willpower was strong enough, the 9 hell's baleful aura here wasn't enough to shake him. Secondly, in the 7th chaos abyss, Lin Feng had split into thousands of clones and was already used to fighting against the 9 hell's baleful aura. Qi, 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 qi. Sword aura swept. Zhu Qi was worthy of being the champion of the universe battle. Even though he had lost his mind, he still had Huang Zun's super strength. To be able to enter the 8th chaos abyss, Zhu Qi's foundation wasn't any weaker than Lin Feng's. The same perfect chaotic body, the same perfect chaotic soul. His control of the body and soul was also 10 times stronger. If they really fought, even if Lin Feng could win against Zhu Qi, it would probably take a lot of effort. But in the current environment, how much of Zhu Qi's true strength could he use? Not to mention that he had completely lost his mind and was overwhelmed by the 9 hell's baleful aura. Aurora explosion. Lin Feng was also holding back in battle to conserve his strength. However, the terrifying battle power of chilling bone destroyed Zhu Qi in just a few moves. It had already hit Zhu Qi's body. Zhu Qi's chest felt like it was struck by lightning, and he let out a miserable cry. Ha! Ha ha! His laughter was filled with misery and endless desolation, but it also seemed to be completely released. Zhu Qi's body fell into the endless chaos abyss and was swallowed by the 9 hell's baleful aura in the blink of an eye. Looking at the body that had already disappeared without a trace, Lin Feng put away the ominous blade desolate bone with a silent expression. At the last moment, Zhu Di regained his consciousness. It was like the final radiance of the setting sun or a brief moment of clarity. He was dead. Another super genius had fallen in this endless abyss. Rest in peace. Lin Feng did not kill Zhu Feng, even though he had held back in the end. After all, they were of the same origin, and they were all from the 7th Mercenary Alliance. Moreover, Zhu Jiao didn't really have any ill intentions towards him and wanted to kill him, because it wouldn't do him any good. Such a genius would not be blinded by jealousy. If that was the case, Zhu Qi would have attacked him when the Ape King arrived. He was just tired. I wonder how the Ape King is doing now. Lin Feng's heart rippled slightly. Compared to Zhu Qi, his feelings for the Ape King were deeper. Zhu Qi borrowed his own hands to seek benevolence and obtain benevolence. In the end, he was liberated. But what about the Ape King? Was he still putting his life on the line? Or perhaps he had already obtained the token and refined it? Swoosh! Lin Feng adjusted his breathing slightly and went down again. Zhu Qi's death made him feel more and more uneasy. This was such a terrifying place where one could enter but not leave. It was like purgatory on earth to force such a super genius to death. But he had no way out. If I don't succeed, I'll die trying. Lin Feng's conviction did not waver because of Zhu Qi's death. The road to the Yellow Springs. Huang Yu and Huang Zhou's eyes were bright, and there was a hint of joy in each of their eyes. Very fast. Yes, this little guy is very fast. In 77 years, he's already close to the source of the nine hells, evil qi. I wonder if he can make it within 100 years. There's no need to think about it. He definitely can't make it. With his current speed, it should take him more than 100 years to reach the source. Before Lin Feng, there were two cultivators who obtained the Qin Emperor's origin core. One took 5 eras, and the other took 3,300 years. This little guy's will is very strong, very strong. It's useless. It's too difficult to refine the Qin Emperor's origin core. According to Father's estimation, only those who have obtained the Qin Emperor's origin core for less than 60 years have a chance of succeeding. Oh, although there are many geniuses in the universe, how many can compare to Father? It's impossible for them to refine the Qin Emperor's origin core like Father. If it weren't for the heavenly Tao, how could Father have fallen? When he becomes a great power in the future, he will be invincible in the universe. Stop talking. Huang Yu and Huang Zhou were silent. Thinking of the past, the world had changed. Their most respected father had fallen, and only the two of them were left among the descendants of Father. That day, they guarded the road to the Yellow Springs and avoided disaster. Close to the bottom of the abyss. It's been 100 years. Lin Feng's face was tense, and he gritted his teeth. At this time, Lin Feng had already switched to walking, stepping on the brambles step by step. Fortunately, he had not reached his limit and did not need to stop to resist the nine hells, evil qi. He was still in a very safe place. His will was enough. But Lin Feng did not see the Ape King. Ta! His feet touched the ground, and that feeling was incomparably clear. Lin Feng knew that he had reached the bottom of the eighth chaotic abyss. The boundless nine hells, evil qi rolled over like waves, and the suffocating feeling was enough to drown him. Boom! Lin Feng's eyes were like thunder, and he broke through the nine hells, evil qi. His senses were incomparably clear. After confirming that there was no aura of the Ape King, Lin Feng sighed softly in his heart. When he truly reached the bottom of the abyss, he knew how dense the nine hells, evil qi was. With the Ape King's will, he was probably doomed. Once he stepped on the road to the Yellow Springs, he was destined to not be able to turn back. This was fate. Zhuema was like this, the Ape King was like this, and so was Jiang Yi. There was nothing to complain about, and there was also nothing to be emotional about. Lin Feng clearly knew that if he could not pass this stage, he would follow in the footsteps of Zhuema and the Ape King and perish here forever. I will definitely succeed. Lin Feng's belief was unwavering. After crossing the wall, he finally saw the source of the nine hells, evil qi. The thing that was releasing the boundless nine hells, evil qi, was a translucent crystal that was the size of a polygon. It was very similar to the water droplet token from before. The difference was that the translucent water droplet was very small, but this translucent crystal was very huge. It was almost half the height of a human. Lin Feng walked closer slowly, and he could clearly see the nine hells, evil qi, seeping out from the translucent crystal. It seemed to contain boundless evil qi energy. With every step he took, he could feel his heart beating violently, as if there was a demon causing mischief. It was very scary. Lin Feng's intuition told him that this translucent crystal was not an ordinary item. Just getting close to it made him shudder, and his heart trembled faintly. It was like the heart of a demon that contained boundless power and mysteries, as if it did not belong to the universe. This is the token. To leave the eighth chaotic abyss, I have to refine it? Lin Feng's expression was solemn. As expected, it was as he had guessed. The eighth chaotic abyss was not that easy. Chapter 26:26. Lin Feng had already seen the token. The grayish transparent crystal token gave him a huge problem. It was like a combination of crystal water droplets, and the nine hells' baneful aura kept seeping out from the cracks. It was extremely dense. Just getting close to it made his heart tremble slightly. The closer he got, the more intense the trembling became. It wasn't controlled by will. Even though Lin Feng didn't feel any fear, the energy contained in this huge, transparent crystal was as majestic as the heavenly Tao. It made him shudder. However, its energy didn't seem to be compatible with the heavenly Tao of the universe. It was the opposite. It seems that I have no way out. Lin Feng looked around. Besides the boundless nine hell's baneful aura, there was nothing else. He couldn't return to the top of the 8th Chaos Abyss because it had long been closed. Just as the Chaos Guardian said, he could only leave this place after refining the token. So this is the real test. Lin Feng was sure that in the thousands of years before, there must have been a peerless super genius in the universe who had come here and tried to refine this huge object. But they all failed. The token in front of him was too huge and powerful. It completely surpassed his ultimate heavenly Tao supreme treasure. Compared to it, Fierce Blade Mournful Bone was like a newborn baby. They weren't on the same level at all. It was impossible for there to be so many tokens like the ones in the previous 7 Chaos Abyss. One was already very precious. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long breath. The dense nine hell's baneful aura surged into his body. It was as if demons were destroying his will. Every moment he stayed here was a test of his will. Instead of hesitating, it was better to be decisive. Lin Feng observed carefully for a while, but there was nothing special about this huge, transparent crystal token. Besides the nine hell's baneful aura, there was nothing else. There's no time to waste. There's still one last era. There is only one epic left in the journey of 10 epics. This was only the 8th Chaos Abyss. There was still the 9th Chaos Abyss. Lin Feng immediately reached out and touched the transparent crystal. It was like millions of crystal water droplets had gathered. Whoosh! Blood flowed out of his wrist like tears falling on the transparent crystal. In an instant, the nine hell's fiendish chi that seeped out from the cracks of the crystal seemed to have found an opening and rushed out with a boom. Crack! Lin Feng frowned. Originally, the nine hell's baleful chi was already dense enough. Now it was 10 times stronger. With a bang in his head, Lin Feng felt as if he had entered another world. His heart was silent. At this moment, Lin Feng naturally couldn't see that as his blood spread throughout the entire huge transparent crystal, the millions of translucent teardrops blossomed with a hazy light, like thousands of fireflies flickering. The surrounding nine hell's baleful chi was enveloped by a transparent white light. Hua hua hua, like a cocoon, Lin Feng merged with the huge transparent crystal. Tens of thousands of the 7 tokens that he had refined previously appeared at this moment. They were like stars hanging in the sky of the universe. Lin Feng found himself in a fantasy world. There was endless light, but he couldn't tell the direction. What is this place? Lin Feng was shocked. Looking at the tens of thousands of translucent teardrops that dotted this strange fantasy world, the nine hell's baleful chi seemed to have disappeared in an instant. Suddenly, rumble. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. It was as if day had turned into night. Crack, crack. A terrifying pressure descended from the endless sky. It wasn't an attack, but an absolute heavenly Tao pressure that wanted to make everything submit. Boom, boom, boom. The surrounding ground collapsed and was crushed into powder by the terrifying pressure. Below, a hazy yellow light flickered. It was as if there were billions of evil spirits that reached out their evil hands to drag Lin Feng into the endless hell. Whoosh! Lin Feng sped forward. His body seemed to be filled with lead. It was extremely stiff, and his speed was extremely slow. What a terrifying pressure! Lin Feng felt like there were tens of thousands of cultivators holding him back from behind. The might of the heavenly Tao descended from above, making it hard for him to move. Below him, it felt like he was in a swamp, making it hard for him to move. Light. The surroundings weren't completely dark. There was still a light in front of him. It was like the only light in the journey, the only oasis left in the desert. I can't die here. Lin Feng knew clearly that below him was a bottomless abyss. If he took a wrong step, he would be doomed forever. Many of the super geniuses in the eighth abyss of chaos had died here. Even their souls were sealed. Lin Feng knew clearly. Once he fell here, his soul would be trapped forever and he wouldn't be able to return. Even his avatar on Earth would be destroyed, because he couldn't feel the existence of his avatar at all. He had never felt this before. No matter how far away he was, he could clearly feel his avatar in any universe secret realm or the Tai Chiang God realm. Because the two shared the same soul, it was like two eyes, one looking left and one right. But now, he couldn't see it anymore. Primordial chaos night. Lin Feng wasn't afraid. Instead, he was filled with challenge. It was his first time encountering such a desperate situation. The road to becoming a primordial chaos knight was extremely difficult. There was no way out. He had to give up everything he had. All of you, get out my way. Lin Feng released endless battle intent. Like a sharp blade out of its sheath, it broke through all obstacles. The power that had been suppressed for a long time suddenly exploded. Blade users had always been domineering and invincible. They had the power and fighting spirit to cut through everything. Lin Feng was the same. He moved forward crazily, looking for the source of the light. The surrounding collapse seemed to disappear in an instant. But in fact, it didn't disappear. It was just suppressed by Lin Feng's will. At this moment, Lin Feng's will had risen to the extreme. Back then, when he was in the seventh abyss of chaos, his avatar was the limit of his will. Unstoppable. Lin Feng was in an excellent state. If someone blocked him, he would kill them. The road alone was full of challenges and madness. Lin Feng's fighting spirit was as tough as diamond. All the difficulties and obstacles were thrown to the back of his mind. With his unyielding will, he moved forward quickly. However, the world here wasn't that easy. Just as Lin Feng broke free from the shackles and swiftly moved forward, an extremely terrifying force suddenly appeared in front of the boundless light. It was an invisible oval-shaped beam of light, and its speed was comparable to a soul attack. It was unavoidable. Pung! Lin Feng's eyes widened and his head shook. Will impact. Lin Feng's body staggered. Caught off guard, he was almost shattered into pieces by this terrifying willpower impact beam. Chapter 26-27. Be it the nine hells' baleful aura or the heavenly Tao suppression, they only affected one's will. It was like arm wrestling to see who was stronger. However, the willpower attack was completely different. It was a direct attack. It was like one was a soul control attack, while the other was a direct soul attack. Even though Lin Feng's willpower was amazing, he was still stunned by the sudden willpower attack. It took him a while to recover. Along with the willpower attack, the suppression from all directions became stronger. It was like an army with a marshal commanding it. So scary. Cold sweat dripped down Lin Feng's forehead. He had never felt so close to death. His willpower would collapse, and he would fall. This was exactly the same as the soul shattering and the physical body being destroyed. However, the universe was vast. He had never heard of a secret technique that could kill someone with willpower alone. It was unheard of, but it was so powerful. It was too terrifying if one was caught off guard. Fortunately, it's not a continuous attack. Lin Feng broke free from the suppression and continued forward. He slowed down a little. The attack, just now, still had lingering fears. It was as if he had walked through the gates of hell. In a dazed state, if there was another wave of willpower attack, he would be doomed. It's definitely not just once. Lin Feng secretly took note. Being prepared and not being prepared were two different things. In terms of power, the willpower attack just now wasn't too strong. It was just that he didn't notice it at that time. He was fully focused on resisting the suppression. It was as if he was ambushed during a battle. If he really wanted to resist, he could easily withstand it. This willpower attack beam was far from enough to defeat him. He continued forward for a few years. That's all. Lin Feng was puzzled. The willpower attack just now was like a flash in the pan. It disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. This made Lin Feng wonder if it was a special situation. After all, everything here was unknown. Since part of the willpower was used as a defense to resist sudden willpower attacks, the willpower that resisted the suppression was reduced by half. His speed was much slower. The deeper we go, the stronger the pressure. It's like it's accumulating. Lin Feng could clearly feel it. Behind him, there seemed to be countless monsters pulling at him, and their numbers kept increasing. Under the endless abyss, tens of thousands of malicious spirits wanted to drag him down to hell. In the sky, the pressure of the heavenly Tao was boundless and boundless, like a lightning tribulation, each wave stronger than the previous. Or is it because of time? Lin Feng could not make a clear judgment. However, whether it was due to distance or time, Wu was constantly being consumed. Although Wu was completely in a state similar to nothingness, it was still a special kind of energy. I have to speed up. Lin Feng could no longer allow time to pass without doing anything. The more willpower he expended to resist the pressure, the faster he could advance. It was impossible to expend nearly half of his willpower to defend himself just for a single beam of willpower. That would be too wasteful. Just leave 10% of your will behind. Lin Feng didn't put all his eggs in one basket. What if he removed his willpower defense and the willpower beam appeared again? Wouldn't he be asking for trouble? The next time, its power might increase, and it might not be able to pass this test. 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, the path of light was long and endless. Walking on this path of light, there was nothing but emptiness. It was as if he was walking on the same spot. 100 years felt like a day, and it was enough to make one collapse. It was as if there was no end to the path, and there was no goal. However, Lin Feng knew that this was a test of willpower. For example, the soul had soul quality, soul control, sea of consciousness, and so on. Willpower also had various aspects. However, there was no description of willpower in the universe, but there were still differences. This path was not really without changes. Just like walking in the desert, there was always yellow sand, but it didn't mean there was no direction. The pressure is getting stronger. This was an important basis for Lin Feng's judgment. The stronger the pressure, the greater the restraint and pressure on his body. Lin Feng's speed was also gradually slowing down. However, at the same time, Lin Feng's willpower was also slowly increasing. For example, every time he used up all his strength and exhausted all his energy, there would be a slight increase when he replenished it the next time. Lin Feng's willpower wasn't increasing inconspicuously, but the pressure was increasing faster. 100 years. Lin Feng had refined the keepsake and entered this unknown world of willpower for a full 100 years. Boom! The space shook, and in front of the endless light, an oval light beam suddenly appeared. With an almost impossible speed, it blasted into Lin Feng's heart. An extremely terrifying willpower impact. It appeared for the second time. Pump! A huge amount of energy exploded in his body, but this time, Lin Feng's body only staggered a little. His eyes were still bright and full of fighting spirit. Although the remaining 10% of his willpower wasn't enough to defend against it completely, it was much better than the first time. Successfully resisted. The gap is exactly 100 years. Lin Feng didn't forget to calculate the time. He had previously guessed that if the willpower impact would appear for the second time, then there would be a time pattern. Right now, it was exactly 100 years. If the next time is another 100 years, then I can be sure. Lin Feng still cautiously left 10% of his willpower to resist. Because the willpower impact had only appeared twice, he couldn't be sure. Moreover, 90% of his willpower was enough to resist the pressure. Boom! As expected, the third wave of willpower impact appeared again in the 200th year. However, this time, Lin Feng, who was already prepared, used 50% of his willpower to resist. Although the third wave of willpower impact was stronger, Lin Feng was as still as a mountain. His body didn't even stagger. It was very easy. Perfect defense. 300 years, 400 years, 500 years. Lin Feng had been in this mysterious world for a full 1,000 years, 1/10 of an era. The willpower impact was very regular. It appeared once every 100 years, and it appeared 11 times in 1,000 years. After countless experiments, Lin Feng was very experienced. Under the premise of ensuring absolute safety, He tried his best to concentrate his willpower on resisting the pressure and move forward quickly. Every time he saved, the distance he traveled would increase, and the pressure and willpower impact would decrease. Both of them improved very quickly. In comparison, the willpower impact was more terrifying. It was like a wave, and each wave was fiercer than the previous one. On the contrary, although the pressure was like a tug of war, Lin Feng was quite outstanding in this aspect. His willpower was very durable. Every 100 years, Lin Feng would concentrate most of his willpower to resist the willpower impact. He was very experienced. Lin Feng did it very carefully and perfectly. However, even so, after traveling for 5,000 years on this endless path of light, Lin Feng still felt the taste of exhaustion. The constant consumption of willpower, regeneration, and resistance made Lin Feng almost reach his limit. Chapter 26-28 Yellow Spring Road. Huang Yu and Huang Zhou looked serious. Even Huang Yu, who always had a smile on his face, looked solemn. As the guardians of the Yellow Spring Road, they had a certain amount of authority given to them by their father, including the Qin Emperor's origin heart. The Qin Emperor's origin heart was a priceless treasure in the Nine Hells Abyss. It was originally owned by Huang Quan, but after his death, it was left in the Nine Hells Abyss under the care of Huang Yu and Huang Zhou. The Nine Hells Abyss came from the Qin Emperor's origin heart, including the token from the first to the seventh abyss. Although it was not a chaos treasure, it was not inferior to a chaos treasure or even more powerful. It did not come from the universe. He is the most outstanding inheritor so far. Huang Zhou's tone was cold, but he could not hide his love for talent. Huang Yu stroked his long white beard and nodded. Of the two successors before him, one had only refined less than 10%, while the other had refined 40%. But he has already refined more than 70%. Huang Yu shook his head and sighed. Although it was more than 70%, the remaining 30% was the most difficult. As the first descendant of Godfather, Huang Yu knew that when Godfather refined the Qin Emperor's origin heart, he also spent a lot of effort, but he still only refined 99% of it, not all of it. When his father obtained the Qin Emperor's origin heart, he was already a supreme god. According to his father, to fully refine the Qin Emperor's origin heart, one must be at the divine master level. Therefore, he spent a lot of effort to build the Yellow Spring Road and the Nine Hells Abyss. The Qin Emperor's origin heart. Huang Yu's eyes were misty as he recalled the past. His father had told him that the Qin Emperor's origin heart not only had the universe's extraordinary power, but it also hid a big secret. However, his father had not fully refined it, so he could not investigate it. If he could obtain the full power of the Qin Emperor's origin heart, his father's strength would at least double. Unfortunately, his father would never be able to fulfill this wish. On the 6,000th year of refining the Qin Emperor's origin heart, Lin Feng had begun to exhaust his strength in the 5,000th year and had reached his limit. However, he had still persisted for 1,000 years. His unyielding willpower had never caused Lin Feng to have the thought of giving up. His unyielding willpower had been constantly eroding the will of new life. This was Lin Feng's undying faith. He wanted to be the strongest. He wanted to challenge all the impossibilities. He was Lin Feng, a young man from Huaxiao on Earth. Since he was young, Lin Feng had never fled or flinched when facing various situations of death. Because Lin Feng clearly knew that a true expert would surely firmly grasp their own fate in their own hands. I will never fall. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with determination, filled with a strong conviction. His tenacious willpower was like a shining star. Regardless of whether it was the dark clouds that covered the sun or the heavy rain, it was unable to cover up his brilliance. He walked forward step by step, fearless of any danger. Boom! The 66th wave of willpower directly blasted Lin Feng to the ground. This terrifying might was like the descent of the wrath of the heavens, and its might was more than 100 times stronger than the first wave of will. Even if Lin Feng exhausted his entire will to resist it, it was still blasted apart. However, The fallen body quickly stood up again. The fragmented will once again condensed into an inextinguishable ball. His back was straight, just like Lin Feng's belief. No matter how many dangers there were in front of him, they could not stop his footsteps. Step by step, every step was firm and steady like a boulder. 7,000 years. 7,500 years. 8,000 years. Although his pace was much slower than before, Lin Feng kept moving forward. With his unyielding willpower, he walked forward towards the endless path of light. His willpower was as strong as the metal of the universe. It was unbelievable. It was as if the words failure and giving up had never existed in Lin Feng's heart. On the road to the Yellow Springs, Huang Yu and Huang Zhou went from feeling pity at the beginning to being surprised. Now they were completely shocked. No one knew better than them how difficult it was to refine the Qin Emperor's origin core. Only a handful of ultimate gods could do that. Only an invincible ultimate god like the Father could refine it. However, Lin Feng was only a master god. What a terrifying willpower. Huang Zhou's eyes were filled with disbelief. Even he, who had lived for tens of thousands of eras, did not have such willpower. However, this human youth had done it. Humans are truly terrifying. Huang Yu's chest rose and fell rapidly as he sighed. That day I asked Father, what is the strength of humans? Is it their numbers or their comprehension? Why are they able to occupy a place among the strongest in every universe? Father only smiled and did not say anything. But now I understand. For a race to be strong and rise in more than one universe, it definitely does not rely on luck. Humans are too strong. Huang Zhou said in a deep voice, there is still 5% left to refine. Ha ha! Huang Yu laughed loudly as he stroked his white beard. You don't think that human Lin Feng will fail after reaching this point, do you? His willpower and potential are limitless. Not necessarily. Huang Zhou's voice was cold. Building a tower can take endless eras, but it only takes an instant to collapse. Anyone who walks on this endless path for an era will eventually get lost. Huang Yu stroked his beard and smiled. There was nothing to argue about. Whether he succeeded or not, the answer would soon be revealed. In his view, this human Lin Feng had no possibility of failure. Father, Huang Yu clasped his hands behind his back as he looked at the ninth abyss of chaos. There was no way out. Lin Feng's heart was filled with deep attachment and endless fighting spirit. In the distant Milky Way, there was his territory, his hometown, his family, and everything that was worth protecting with his life. Even if it was painful and lonely, he would not take a step back. The willpower impact of the path of light became stronger and stronger, becoming a whetstone for Lin Feng's willpower. Tough, sharp, and invincible. Clang! Not only did the 90th wave of willpower not cause Lin Feng to fall back, it was as if he had been enlightened, causing Lin Feng's willpower to undergo a fundamental transformation. It was like a peerless saber that had been hammered, infused, and polished countless times. It had finally taken shape. Pung! Lin Feng forcefully withstood this frighteningly powerful willpower attack. His originally somewhat misty and dusky eyes instantly became incomparably bright. It was as though a sleeping lion had finally awakened. Pa! Pung! Ha! All the restraints and pressure were removed at this moment. Lin Feng seemed to have removed all the heavy baggage and iron blocks from his body. His body was incomparably light. His footsteps suddenly became faster, and his mind was exceptionally clear. His whole person was like a new person, as if he had been reborn. It's right in front. Lin Feng looked at the endless path of light and was extremely certain in his heart. It was a kind of intuition, a kind of calling, a kind of feeling from the heart.